Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Live from iRacing's virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway, we welcome you to a celebration of speed that is 30 years in the making. This is the 2024 iRacing Brickyard 400. We're back home again in Indiana, where after nearly 4 seasons off, the racing capital of the world is back on the iRacing special events calendar, and we're happy to have you strapped into the virtual seat and along for the ride with us for this special presentation of RaceSpotTV and the iRacing Esports Network. Alongside myself, Evan Pasoko, I'm joined in the booth tonight by Lorenzo Bonder. Our producer downstairs is Hugo Luis, and Lorenzo, it is so good to be back, to be here at the Brickyard once more with NASCAR Cup cars.
Absolutely, hey, Evan. I'm happy. I'm very thrilled. After so long, we had a little bit of a break. It became 200 road course. Don't get me wrong. I like the road course. I like the attention that it brought to not only real life but also virtual. So you can try something that is different on a layout that I think fit NASCAR cars more so than I anticipated to be. But the Brickyard is a traditional event, one of the largest attending events in real life, and bringing it back to the virtual world as well is always good.
Indianapolis hosts so many races on the iRacing special events calendar. We take a look at that calendar now. Of course, it all started with the Indy 500 earlier in June, the Brickyard 400 back where it belongs. A new event comes to the service a little bit later this year as well, with the Indy 6 Hour with some GTP, LMP2, and GT3 IMSA cars. So it is very rare that you will see a facility host so many major events on the calendar as you do here. And it's not just Indy to look forward to. Other heavy hitters on the horizon, the Spa 24. Of course, if you're talking NASCAR specifically, the Bristol 500 and some others. So there is a lot still to go on the iRacing special events calendar. You can find out more information at iRacing.com/special events. But tonight we have coverage of the top split for the NASCAR iRacing Series Open Setup Competition. The 35 highest ranked drivers just now wrapping up, Lorenzo, a single car qualifying session. That qualifying attached to this session, and all of these splits are seeded based on iRating. So the best of the best are ready to go at it. Let's go and introduce you to them and take a look at our starting grid. So it will be Sean Conklin on pole position. 21752 should say is the time for the 3 car. He'll be joined on the front row by the number 6 of Clayton Hoffman. Then on row 2, it is the number 3 driver on the grid, Tommy Gossett, and 4th goes to the 12 of Miller Bonds. And back on row number 3, it is Jacob C. Schneider and Corey Hines through the top 6.
Absolutely. Roger Pierce and Cruz Caldell will close the 4th row, with Garen Maines being the number 1 car in the split and Matt Disciani in 10th place. Vinicius Moraes in 11th and Derek Heitman round out the 6th row.
Look at number 13 goes to Matt L. Cox, and Jay Sanchez will start from 14th position. Andrew DeFaro will roll from P15. He'll be alongside P.B. Henry in the number 16 spot. Nolan Hodgson in 17th position, and Jason Maines in 18th.
Yeah, Vincent Crowe and Arrow Russell go to the 10th row. William Price and Jose Acosta go in the 11th row. And Joe Torres and Keegan Fleckenstein in 24th place for the 12th row.
Almost all the way through, we take a look. John Schwartz will start 25th tonight, as long with Nicholas Padovich in 26th. James Holzer 27th. Brad Newman in 28th position, with Charles Wembley and Junsa Lim through your top 30.
And then the final drivers, you have Jacob Klein and Paul Hill, Mark Paget and Zach Lambert in the 17th row, and then Luis Becerra in the final row in 35th.
It is looked at the bottom at your starting grid. Qualifying times put down by everybody inside of the top 26. So drivers from 27th on back, gridded in positions based on provisionals. And although they're lined up near some of those starting spots that they've been using for the road course the last couple of years, they now roll behind the pace car as they get set with this return to the oval. This is a racetrack that everybody is so familiar with, Lorenzo. It really needs no introduction, but this racetrack, just for familiarity's sake, clock it in at 2.5 miles in length. 4 corners banked at 9.2 degrees. Again, this race burst onto the scene. Stock cars were first here on the Art of Bricks back in 1994, and now we celebrate the 30th anniversary of that with a return here on the iRacing service, and of course, the return for the stars of the NASCAR Cup Series going to be competing here this weekend. Once you get the pageantry out of the way, which is a thing for a lot of these special events, we are left with a very grueling challenge. 400 miles in these NASCAR stock cars is no easy feat, especially at such a technically demanding circuit as this one.
Absolutely, and you don't even realize that it's technically demanding because of, we're kind of like used with Indy 500 and the arrow push and everything. Then the right fronts are going to take a beating, so you kind of have to think as well about the field going the long way. You can do 37 laps on on a normal stint. If you want to save it, you can go it up to 40 laps, Evan. So the strategy over here not only works for the Indy 500, but over here is just as important as well if you really want to be at the front, if you want to have a chance to win.
160 laps, 400 miles on the docket this evening. And as always, we're happy that you're with us here on RaceSpotTV. The Ryco Performance cars, you see all of their familiar colors, have a hard representation inside of the top 10. Can one of them kiss the virtual bricks tonight? We're going to find out. Pace car will turn off. Field in the hands of pole sitter Sean Conklin. After 3 years away, we're back on the oval in Indianapolis. Let's go racing at the Brickyard. Lap number 1 comes to a close. Pole sitter Conklin lead. Just saw one car nearly wreck in the center of 3 and 4. Used the pit lane access road to right the ship, and we are through the first 2.5 miles of this race, and off and away we go. First, second, third were fine for the first lap and a half, and then we had our first pass. Clayton Hoffman, who started this race in second, gets passed by Tommy Gossett. Gossett in that number 9 car on screen, moves now into P2 behind his teammate.
Yeah, so it's a very quiet stop for everybody, which is I like a little bit that much. But the thing is, the one you really don't want to overdrive the car, right, Evan? Because like I said before, you can burn the right fronts. If you burn the right fronts already early on, you need that grip. The car is going to get more slidey as the stint goes on. We saw the track conditions. They're not cold. They're kind of hot. So you really need to manage your tires throughout the stint. The fuel is going to be there if you want to lift off a little bit, so you can think about the long run, the long game. It's a good thing, but you really don't want to overdrive these first few laps. Just want to take it cautiously, then find your openings.
And you can see already as the race leaders start to fan out, the top cars always trouble already off a 2-1 driver into the inside wall. It's the 17 car, a Charles Wimbley. It does come to a stop on the racing surface, but the race leaders are clear. So Barney the flagman holds the yellow at bay. This race stays green. Wimbley gets back going. But that right there, almost the perfect example, Lorenzo, of that tricky technicality of this racetrack. It seems like flat corners, they're all the same. It's all symmetrical, that it would be easy like it looks on paper, but all corners here have unique challenges. And admittedly, these stock cars aren't built for a racetrack like this. This racetrack wasn't built for stock cars like this. So it provides a unique challenge, and we're going to see mistakes like that one all night long.
Oh, they're going to come with plenty. So is that they heavy cars? You drive. It's kind of like driving boats around a very flat and somewhat straight course. So you have to be very precise with your inputs and how you put the pedal on the your foot on the throttle as well. So this is, I think, is a little bit of a ballet. So it's a slow ballet, but if you, like I said before, if you don't overdrive the car, manage the tires, think about the long run. That's what's good. The problem is whenever you're at the back, if you want to climb up, that's where the problem can start, because desperation time can just click like that and your race can be over in the blink of an eye.
It does seem like there is a lot of time in this race, and there is. But if you started 35th on the grid, look how this field spreads out. You're already nearly a mile behind the leaders as the line starts to stretch out. So that poor qualifying effort, or for those drivers that either had their lap times disallowed or decided not to qualify, it is a long road to hoe. There's a second look at the replay, and it was a little bit self-inflicted. There was no contact until after that 17 Bishita Wimbley got into the wall. Could be an example of the aero tightness. This racetrack is not quite like a Daytona, a Talladega, and Atlanta when it comes to the draft, but make no mistake, the draft is a huge player, even in these big, heavy stock cars, and you're going to want to make that draft work to your favor. And look at this move on the outside. Trying to go 2 for 1 is the number 1 of Garrett Maines, highest ranked driver by iRating in this race, and he went around the outside of 2 of them in that set of corners.
Yeah, I think this high line is going to be a little bit of an overpowered line of sorts, because, you know, it kind of gives you a little bit of a grip. You're not going to burn your tires way too much. But I'm wondering what Hoffman is actually thinking right there as he's battling Bonds. I think Bonds right now might have the upper hand on that inside line, but they cannot, press themselves into the wall. That is going to just cause danger just early on. We're barely 7 laps in.
And if I'm Hoffman, I'm getting a little bit claustrophobic, because the Ryco performance cars are running 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. You can do the math. Hoffman, the only one of them not in the top 7, as he rides into the number 4 spot right now. Of course, Garrett Maines, a familiar name. Ryco Performance supported car in the NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, where he drives for FGR Excelia Racing. He's making a move on his teammate on the outside. That's Tommy Gossett. Garrett Maines started this race way back in P9, and only 7 laps in, he's up to P2, but an nice move for Clayton Hoffman's Toyota. He uses that 1 essentially as a blocker, Lorenzo, followed him through, and Hoffman also gets the spot gained.
Yeah, which is a good thing, working with your teammates. I think all the guys in Brickyard are working kind of like in tandem. And you can see the incident with Russell that we saw a little bit early on, kind of like being sent into the pit road right there. Fortunately, didn't trigger the yellow flag, but the number 33 is basically all gone.
A second incident that could have very well been a yellow that did end up being one. I saw he got a little bit of damage, but the way that pit road wall jetties out, I think he's really fortunate that he didn't end up like a shish kebab on a 4th of July weekend on that pit road wall. No damage to the car. If there is damage, it's, I think, minor, all things considered. The other problem for him was you saw he then had to drive down the entirety of pit lane at pit road speed. And again, if you want to win a premier iRacing special event like this, things like that can happen. Now, I'm not going to say we've seen some historic comebacks, some thrilling stories over the years with this race and others, but more times than not, you want to win a 400-mile endurance stock car race, essentially, you got to be perfect. Look at these two leaning on each other in turns 1 and 2. All of this going on just behind that big Ryko contingent. Looks like they're able to make it through the corner side by side. All right, and now top side of the racetrack with the speed off of the corner is Heitman. Car on the inside there is Andrew Navarro, who keeps the nose to the inside, and they will stay side by side for nearly a whole lap at this point.
Yeah, which is not going to do well for their tires on the long run. We always got to think about that. Navarro giving a really good job of a Heitman from the Team Conti driver, as we can see right there, not being, not giving him the easy way out. So for now, lots of position, but still within the 4-car gap. That's kind of like forming a second group of sorts if we think about it.
A bit of a separation there, and I think Navarro showing what he's here to do because he was super aggressive, staying on the bottom or the inside. Kind of tricky at times. Look at that 55 on the inside. It was Cruz Caudell a little bit, in the number 13 machine. Got real sideways, got a bit of the curb almost on the inside of the turn, loosened him up. It allowed a PB Henry to clear him. And now on the inside, Jay Sanchez trying to drive through. These cars continuing to fight aggressively, but a couple of tough corners for Caudell as he's dropped a few spots now.
And if you start dropping, it's the tendency, if you're not able to to move a little bit forward as the stint goes on, is that those tires, especially the front right, as there was near contact, as both lanes go side by side, front row and back row still side by side. You don't want to be doing, so like I said, overdrive the car. Indy is avoid overdriving. If you avoid overdriving, you're gonna be good all day, all week long, all race long, and the one thing you really want to do is be safe.
And it is so true in these stock cars. It's true in open wheel cars that you can't just will the car through the corners and will the car to do what you want it to. If you want a run, you have to set it up 2, 3, 4 corners ahead of time to be able to use the draft, to be able to use your corner in and corner exit to put yourself in position. And there's more trouble now way in the background there in turn 4. And that one finally going to put us to the first caution flag of the night, as at least 4 cars stacked up. That had to have been mid-20s or so. But at lap number 12, we cannot escape another one. And finally, it is caution flag number 1 on the afternoon. Quite a cleanup going to be going on off the corner. And we'll wait to scrub that one back and take a second look to see what happened to put us under the first yellow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking forward for that replay. And I think now the drivers, I think they're going to calm themselves a little bit. They know they're going to reach about the 10% mark of this race. By the time I think we go green flag here, Evan, the question is, who's going to try to something different, going into the pit stop and see something. Let's look at the replay. 3 wide.
But we were impressed enough by the 2 wide, and the 3 wide did not work. And you see that 24 getting torn up. He was on the outside of it all, that's Jose Acosta. Then to the inside, Paul Hill and Brad Newman got together. You'll see the contact there. I mean, the 24 can't go much further up, and they just start getting together, catch him in the left rear. 16, but Newman's able to get away, and then a big hit late as that 24 came across the racetrack. Joe Torres was able to split the gap, and Luis Bezerra was not able to. That was the driver with heavy damage. Mark Paduet also with some damage. So again, at least 4, if not 5 drivers involved in an early yellow, all things considered, in a 160-lap contest. Yes, we got away with some things. Caution flag going to be good news for Aaron Russell. The 33 car, the only car scored 1 lap down at the moment, because he should be given an opportunity to receive the lucky dog and get his lap back. I think the good news ends there because that car is damaged. Here's the onboard look with Becerra. I mentioned almost split the gap. First car gets through, second does, and unfortunately third time's not the charm. That gap closed up fast in front of him.
Yeah, absolutely nothing you can do right there to try to, avoid, and that's the worst thing you can have. And you're not going to stop a near 3-ton car just like that, as I think we're going to have our first pit party of this race.
And it is a party indeed. It looks like everybody coming to pit road early in this one. Garrett Maines' best lap was a 52.9. It was no more than 8 laps into the race, so they weren't really falling off a ton, but everybody seems to be unanimous in its decision, and a trip down to the pit lane under the yellow flag, an opportunity for mistakes because margins are so thin. Everybody comes in at once. Can you get into the box clean, and can you get out clean? Garrett Maines, right side tires on, left side tires. He's going for the works, 4 tires and fuel. Where does the one cycle out? His teammates in the number 1 pit stall after qualifying on pole. Conklin just gets in front of the 1 car, maintains the lead. It is Maines off second, Hoffman third, Gossett 4, Schneider off in P5. Pretty clean exchange for most of those top cars.
Yeah, I think this was going to be the way, right? 4 tires. Just try to do your normal thing. Don't over-risk things too much already. You're barely 10% into this race, so you still have a lot of race left. We're looking. I was just quick looking over here. We might have 2 hours of race left over here, Evan. So that's the thing. You gotta have that long endurance mindset if you really want to think about having prospects of winning this race down the line.
Yeah, more drivers will not win this race because of a mistake that they make or somebody else's mess that they get caught up in, more than drivers will lose this race because they threw it in a desperation move. I mean, it really is about being there in the conversation, and some of the chatter over the driver radio after the incident was a little bit of frustration on, are we going 3 wide 12 laps in to a 160-lap race? Now, that's not to say those drivers back there in the 20s were the only infractors on that. We saw guys up front pushing 2 wide pretty aggressively, a couple people getting onto the curbs. We could have easily have had a yellow on lap number 2 if we did not get away with the single car spin on the back straightaway. So there has been a lot of aggression early in this race, but again, it's not the same story for everybody. Not everybody can be Sean Conklin or Clayton Hoffman and hang out up front and protect track position. If you're in the 30s or the 20s, you kind of have to be in that attack mode, because if you've got to pass 20 different race cars to be able to get up and in a position to win this race, that means you've got to make a pass every 7 laps or every 8 laps. You got to pass somebody. It's no easy task. So some drivers, right where that incident happened, are going to have to be aggressive. The other big story, I think, is some of the bigger movers. I was going to highlight Garrett Maines. Obviously, Lorenzo, we've been watching him come through the field. I don't think that should shock anybody. One thing, though, that we did not touch on is Nicholas Padovich, who started this race in 26th position. That car came down pit road with everybody else, but only took either 2 tires or a fuel-only pit stop. I'm not even sure that car took tires at all. So everybody else was pretty unanimous for tires that fuel throughout. It looks like only Patovich and maybe John Schwartz back in 22nd either took 2 or no tires. So I'm going to be curious to see, does that work out for the 21 on the inside there in P7, or does he get swallowed up?
That's a really good question. I think, can you make a judgment early on in the race? Would you be able to make a decision early on in the race to think, oh, maybe my right fronts are really good as the stint goes on, and can I push with the same guys that have 4 tires or barely into this race that have new fresh tires and can push for really low laps? Well, we'll see in a little bit.
Pace car going to be in this time, and for the first time, the control car gets to dictate when we restart. So you're looking to the forward on the right-hand side of your view of Sean Conklin as we look to the NASCAR restart zone. Green flag in the air, 54 off and away. He'll lead to turn 1. Teammate to the inside. Here comes Garrett Maines. Contact as they went into turn number 2. And now it's going to be a drag race for the lead at Indianapolis. Clayton Hoffman watches on from 3rd. He'll push to the outside. You go on board with P4, Tommy Gossett. He'll go to the inside. And courtesy of the draft up top, it is a defense of the lead for Sean Conklin. But for how long? He's into the outside wall. Maines down to the inside. New race leader in the iRacing Brickyard 400. It's Garrett Maines.
Well, early on, an aggressive out of the gate for Gary Maines. Well done. You got a little bit of a help from his Ryko teammates, but got it there at the end. And now you can see Gossett on the inside of Hoffman.
Oh, really tight there for Tommy Gossett. And up top, Clayton Hoffman able to shake it off for the moment, defend 3rd. But again, all of those Team Ryko machines are on it early. Couple of cars looking to the inside. 3 wide, back of the screen there as it's Moraes all the way to the very bottom of the racetrack. He'll get one of them with a pass on Andrew Navarro. Can he get the second? He's tight. Almost gets in to Roger Pierce on the outside of the racetrack. Clearly no lessons learned from an early pileup, and now nearly spinning off of the corner was Murray.
They managed to make it work at the end of things, but a little bit of more of a feisty restart than we anticipated it to be right up.
Get a moment to catch our breaths and jump right back into the action, this time on board with Derek Heitman as he's challenging that 15 machine of Vinicius Moraes ahead. This is a battle for what's going to be about 9th, 10th, and 11th position on the racetrack as they get maybe a moment of single file behind them. That's the red number 25, PB Henry. Down to the inside of the car who took no tires. That's Patovich dropping it back. Restarted in 7th. It has not been awful, but it hasn't been great either. 2 more cars going to get on by as Newman passes. So the no tire call and that gamble for Nicholas Patovich putting that car in the wrong direction at this point.
Yeah, and the Australian is making moves. That's interesting to know. He was basically one of the guys involved in the yellow flag crash. Was that inside guy on that inside lot? But good to know that, like you just said, if you're at the back, like in the 15s to 20s, and then even behind that, you need to get your move on to scale up the grid, and that's what the Australian is doing right now.
And we talk about Maines up front. Well, Maines in the midfield as well. As you take a look at Jason Maines there running 21st position. The mid-pack has been where things are pretty chaotic all throughout. They look pretty calm now. That's a bit of an anomaly that there's more funning happening up in the teens than the 20s. You take a look here at this group of race cars. They are again passing on the outside Nicholas Patovich, who did not take tires, only fuel the last time down pit road road, and that white 21 car going the wrong direction. Now with the challengers to the inside, trying to also make the move on through. So it is not a good decision at this point, but it is not so slow that it is a roadblock and a hazard to the other cars, which is always a concern.
Yeah, especially with heavy cars like this. If it was even at Indy cars, it would be complicated because there is the possibility of having some air, net codes, and things like that. And the net code can sometimes be powerful. But over here, just because you're driving side by side and you're kind of trading doors and things like that, it's just the opportunity to put yourself in a situation you really don't want to be in early on. And now we can see basically more moves up the field, one more spot up. I think that was, I don't know if that was Acosta, but it might be Petrovic involved as well, as he's dropping positions.
Yeah, this just behind them looks like the 22 of Crow and then Jason Baines, who we had talked about previously. They were fighting. That's what you were looking at back there. And now again up front, this single file train. Garrett Main stormed to the race lead, but he has not been able to walk away with it. Teammate with Sean Conklin, who started on to pole position, the young teenage driver there in the number 2 spot, has kept his teammate, who raced him very aggressively, has kept him honest and has stayed on the bumper. You have about the top 6 or 7 cars still scored within 1 second of the leader. Now, see right-hand side of that good look way above. There's some separation, but those top 6, 7 cars toss a blanket over them anybody's race through the opening 20 laps.
And now, I don't know if there will be any separation, though. You can see that the top 3 are trying to separate the best way they can from the cars from Gossett, Schneider, and possibly Bonds, and try to just cruise themselves along into this first portion of the race. But again, it's that slow dance in a fast track like this, and a track that can be tricky for everybody.
I don't know, we mentioned all of those familiar looking Ryco Performance paint schemes that you see on a lot of the cars. Well, those special paint schemes in celebration of that team celebrating their 4-year anniversary. It was today, 4 years ago, that Ryco Performance was launched. You see the 4 years decal on the front bumper. They'll still have some of their other individual sponsors and partners here and there, but all of them in those white, black, and red anniversary paint schemes. I already mentioned off at the top of the show, it's the 30th anniversary of the inaugural Brickyard 400. It's iRacing's return to the oval here on the special events calendar. So all of those storylines fit in with the pomp and circumstance and the tradition and the wow that this racetrack always seems to bring up. And look at that, it goes all the way down to the helmets and the fire suits inside the car. That's a tip of the cap to the graphics team over at Ryco Performance, because not all the time in these stock cars, Lorenzo, with these drivers hitting away, will the paint builders and all that go far enough to do the whole get-up.
Yeah, absolutely, and you got to give props. You got to represent the team, you got to represent the brand, and these are one of the guys that are trying to put their brand out there. Doing a really massive push, trying to put up setups for everybody that is not only competitive, but it's in a very good sense. I heard a lot of things from Ryco setups in this season that been a top-notch setup maker for NASCAR cars, alongside with Team Connie as well, and so many others that you have, like McConey and many others. It's kind of like the environment in NASCAR. It's so interesting in my point of view that comes from the roadside, and just see like the Apexes, the VRS, and so many others that the level of detail they try to go, so you have a setup that prevails over the other in NASCAR is just something that boggles my mind.
We've seen some fun stories through the years of I don't know if exploit's the right word, but teams finding new things and innovating, right, with paint schemes and, or I should say, with the setups. Of course, this is an open setup race, so drivers are running their setups. We assume all those Ryco cars run in the same flavor of whatever is in for them at the moment. Ryco supports 2 cars in that NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series in Ryan Luza, and then, of course, also the guy leading this race right now, Ed Garrett Main. Saw a little bit of a door check there. That was Corey Hines and Paul Hill back in 20th and 21st position. And this is what I mean about that gap being challenging and having the mistakes. Hines and Hill, 2 very different stories for that red number 14 machine there, and then the 23 machine of Paul Hill behind him. Corey Hines started this race P6. That's a real good place to start this race. Has slid back to 20th. That has cost him a ton of time and puts him into a little bit of a desperate situation. Paul Hill, on the other hand, started 30th. He's up 9 spots to 21st. The problem is, even though objectively Paul Hill's night has been better than Corey Hines's to this point, Lorenzo, they're in the same spot. So it doesn't matter if you had a good opening 25, a bad opening 25. If you're still 20 spots away from the leader, your night's just as bad. These drivers will make several attempts, I'm sure, for many of them, and especially drivers with the I rating at this level in this top split to try to run this race a couple of times this week. But I don't know if many drivers are here to say, I want to, get a top 10 in the Brickyard 400. That's what I would do in like the bottom split or the second from the bottom split as a bit of a moral victory. It's not what these guys are here for. They're all here to win.
Oh, absolutely. They all want to have, that will to win this race, especially a race that has a lot of tradition, not only in NASCAR, in iRacing, but in general, right? The Brickyard means something. Winning at Indy means something. It's not like you're winning at of course, every oval matters. I'm thinking about it like one of the short ones. Like winning maybe at the fairgrounds or something like that. You really want to be winning major events, and this is a major event, so you got to put all the effort in a race like this, especially that for Maines, he doesn't have to deal with the pressure that he had on the Coca-Cola in the Coke series, so now he can drive a little bit more, with the weight off his shoulders of sorts.
And I mentioned it when we were looking at the special events calendar too, right? I mean, 3 special events on that calendar taking place here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The Brickyard 400, the Indy 6-hour, the Indianapolis 500. I don't know if there's any other track that has 3 dates on the iRacing special events calendar, let alone 2. Rare enough.
Daytona has 2.
Yeah, with the 500 and the 24 as well. So that, I think, there alone can just be the statement maker for IMS on the fact that this place is special. And sure, it may be a virtual world, but these drivers are the best at what they do. This racetrack has that same emotional connection to them as it would for any of the 30-plus drivers who are going to strap into the Cup cars on Sunday. Everybody wants to win at Indianapolis. It doesn't matter if it's at home in the sim rig or in your NASCAR Cup Series car on a Sunday afternoon. This place is special at whatever level of racing we're talking. One thing we're seeing up front here, though, is for the first time tonight, the leader has started to grow the advantage a little bit. I was very, key to point out that Maines was not able to pull away when he got to the race lead. That's the case no longer. He has pulled a bit of a gap over the battle lane behind him as Clayton Hoffman under fire now by the 2 of Jacob Schneider for P4.
Yeah, so finally there's I think that's the first time we see the gap nearly fuller for the second. It's not on the second that Garrett Main has on Conklin, but he's pushing, but you can see right behind him, right on Hoffman, right in front of Hoffman, Schneider and Navarro going at it hard going to turn number 3.
Oh, and they're going to get into each other that time, and Navarro didn't like that one as they discuss over the radio while it was going on. That 2 car, I don't know if he came down and took a swipe, but he blocked that 4 and then never went up. to give them a run into the corner, and a bit of bad blood between Navarro and Schneider over the radio as the battle for P4 and 5 almost crossed the line.
Yeah, you really want to get your elbows out and to try to get your move on. But that was nearly caution. I thought it was going to be a caution when they came to turn number 3. They had a little bit of a contact. I think Navarro had to back down a little bit to try not to push on Schneider and cause a yellow flag. That could have been a big one over here. So that's the fortunate thing to think about. Sad you're seeing things over the radio, but keep the race tight among everybody.
Again, no lessons learned from some of the earlier incidents. It is easier said than done to stay completely disciplined for 160 laps. And again, if you're at this level, you may not be that spooked of driving that aggressively because you're confident in your abilities. Obviously, there's a lot of teammates or drivers that are familiar with each other from running and a lot of these top split NAS races or private league stuff together where you know how everybody else drives and you can kind of gauge your trust level on how close can I run with this person. I don't know if the trust was really there in that last little bit of leaning and blocking that we were seeing, but there are certainly some instances of it spread throughout the field as now 30 laps down in this Brickyard 400, and Garrett Mainz's advantage nearly a full second. Sweepy to move on the inside in 3. Roger Pierce gets around the 12 of Miller Bonds. That one was for P7, and with Bonds on the back foot, I was going to take a look to see did that number 7 Matt DiCianni be able to make a move. Thought he was going to get a run off the corner. He does not. He's that black car third in line. He'll stay put.
Yeah, he'll stay put for that Team Connie NASCAR car. So let's try to see how he's gonna try to go past the 2 Ryko ones, and looking forward to see. I think he's the best placed Team Connie car, I think, in the grid so far, but it's gonna be complicated for you to try to get the performance, as we see a little bit of a on the play-by-play on the pip screen, so you can see both the Connie and Ryko cars from the perspective going on turn number 3, how taking their lines and trying to avoid the arrow push.
Yeah, that's the challenge. Is the draft is a benefit, but it does make these cars really tight. And where is that middle point where you enjoy the fact that the car in front of you is punching the hole in the air because there's going to be less wind resistance on the front of the car? You're going to go faster. But when you don't have the air pushing down on the nose of the race car, you lose all of that front end grip and downforce because that car's not getting planted onto the racetrack when the tires turn. All kinds of different calculations happening microsecond by microsecond at a time behind the wheel is what these drivers are trying to figure out. Touching that time off at 2, PB Henry and James Holzer as the 5. I think he got into and moved Henry out of the way. Henry took a swipe back at him, and the theatrics continue here in the opening quarter.
Should I be biting my nails right now, Evan?
Right. If we're going like this the whole way, it's going to be a long and breathless 2.5+ hours, because look at this now for P2. Jacob Schneider on the inside. Gossett on the outside. Coughlin watching on as these now slip to the number 4 position. Who wins out in this one? Give it to the 2 of Schneider.
Took a while, but got it there. At least it is a 3-car Ryko train of sorts, and they're breaking away from the first yellow flag.
Caution flag number 2, some smoke down the back straightaway. The accident site has been cleared, thinking it's that 16 machine of Brad Newman. Of course, the last accident we saw was a big 4-car pileup. This one not quite as extensive if they've already cleared off, and also not even looking like a ton of damage on Newman's machine. He was running in 13th position at the moment of the yellow flag, and we will wind it back and take a second look, and I think what we'll see is it was a battle between PB Henry, who we just saw get into it with James Holzer. Holzer made that pass. PB Henry slipped back into the clutches of Newman, and then they started leaning on each other in a two-way battle, and it all went wrong somewhere off of turn 2.
Yeah, and looking from Newman's perspective on his car, looking from afar over here, doesn't look like there's too much damage beyond tires. Looking at the replay.
Oh, and you saw it there. I'm sure the 25 Henry up top is going to feel like he got squeezed into the outside wall. Of course, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway instrumental in designing the safer barrier, but it was not built with the safer barrier, right? So those jet out from the wall and means that you got to get a little bit further off the corner to get the full width of the straightaway. I think he got squeezed just a touch, and then either maybe even got hit from behind by Vicinius Murray behind that turned him into Newman. Newman's car went around again, minus a kiss to the right rear quarter panel. No other major damage. And the last time pit lane was open, we saw everybody come down. Here they all come again. Lessons learned. We saw a couple of cars go for no tires. Some late dive outs of pit road as Cruz Caudell decides to not come down pit road. He may be one of the only ones on the lead lap to not come in. Leaders may likely go for the 4 tires into fuel again. Let's see.
I think that might be the way to go as we're going to approach 25% of this race, right?
One car cruising through pit road. I think Jay Sanchez might have missed his box because that would have been way too fast. Garrett Maines did go for the 4. His teammate right there can't sneak off with the number 1 stall. They got to race down to that line with the green cones at some of these NASCAR tracks. That scoring line is immediately after what we refer to as the number 1 pit stall given to the pole sitter. Of course, tonight, that one's held by Conklin. It's just the pit stall furthest down the line where they can essentially hit the gas and be scored as the leader. But at Indy here, it's a bit more of a gap. It allowed Maines to maintain, no pun intended, Gossett second off, Conklin third, Schneider 4, Hoffman 5. All of them 4 tires and fuel. But Jay Sanchez in the 35 car, just checking the timing and scoring. You saw that car drive through while we were watching some of the other drivers come down pit road and get serviced. He missed the box. He just completely drove through pit road. We assume Sanchez, because he was planning on pitting, will come back down to pit road now. But again, it's an interesting spot because what's worse, right? Do you get on even tires? He started this race 14th and he was running in 16th. He had lost 2 spots. So do you throw away 20 spots to get on equal tires as everybody and go all the way to the back and hope you have the speed to be able to pass them back? Or do you stay out on the older tires and try to play a little bit of defense? Looks like Sanchez indicating to the inside that he is going to come down pit road. He does indeed do that, and that is, interestingly enough, going to leave us only the number 13 of Cruz Caudell as the leader. He didn't come down pit road at all and is going to be out there on some 22 lap older tires.
Wonder how Caudell is actually going to try to play this one. We saw that earlier on. We had Nicholas, so he had a somewhat of a similar strategy of sorts, right? Evan put up 2 tires, went a little bit aggressive, jumped up 19 spots, but eventually got eaten by the whole pack whenever this race restarted. We kind of have to figure the same. The number 13 is going to get swollen by everyone once we go to green flag one more time here at Indianapolis.
And we'll see times, somebody will make a mistake, they'll miss their pit stall. They'll then decide to, I'll just stay out in the end. It's worth noting it was a very conscious decision, at least from what I saw, from Caudell to stay out, right? Everybody else was coming down to the pit lane, and then he very clearly ducked out of line and said, no, I'm good. He's had a bit of an interesting night. Started in the number 8 spot. He was scored in 16th position when the caution flag came out. You wind it all the way back to the very first pit exchange in which we saw how bad the no tire call went for Nicholas Padovich. That was only on 11-lap-old tires, so the deficit and the wear that Caudell's going to have to be trying to make work is going to be twice as bad as what we saw at a Caudell early. So there's a reason I'm not on top of a pit box for a big team like Raikkonen Lorenzo, so I will not claim to know all of the strategies and the intricacies, but interesting decision, at least from my perspective, and I'm with you. I think that car's going to get eaten up a little bit here, but let's see how it shakes out. The benefit for Caudell is he gets to refire this race on his command. Pace car in, 2 laps shy from quarter distance in this Brickyard 400. Caudell to the inside, Mains to the outside of row number 1. Green flag back in the air. Wasn't a bad launch for Caudell, but as they get to turn number 2, Garrett Mains has gotten up to speed. He's got the run off of the corner. Mains back to the lead, 3 wide. Schneider to the inside in the 2 car. They are splitting the old tires inside and out as that 13 going to start to slip on the outside.
And you can see now Caudell trying to get swollen by the entirety of the field. Whenever you have these guys with lesser rubber than everybody else, you can get a sticky situation. You can see nearly 2 wide coming out of turn number 4, and nearly also 3 wide as you can see the Team Conti car. I think that might be DeCiani trying to move up the field, or even Bonds trying to move up the field as well.
There was some contact back in the pack. Charles Wembley missed the corner entry, got into Vincent Crowe. Crowe went into the outside wall, and he has made his feelings known on the driver radio channel, but we race on. There was no spin, so there was no yellow flag. Mostly single file for the drivers inside of the top 10, but look at these ones playing chicken down to the grass into turn 3. That is Brad Newman on the inside of Price, and Vicinius Murray, who was topside, backed out of it. Newman gonna get the double-double past both of them on the bottom in that bright blue 16 car.
Somehow, some way, survive the whole ordeal, but another can you complicated restart if you really want to call it that. Newman on the inside.
Contact there. Newman not happy with what he got. He wants more. Now he's on the inside of the 14. Hines smoke in the center of 1 and 2. Caution flag is out. And Vincent Crowe, at least one, if not the driver around in the 22 machine. I had just mentioned that he had some help into the wall no more than a few laps ago. And I think Crowe, an innocent victim in this one. I think something happened. Joe Torres in the 30 had some sort of major issue, and I think Crowe was just wrong place at the wrong time. We'll reserve judgment until we watch it again with all of you, but I'm thinking it all starts by the 30 car, and let's see. Off of turn 1, just completely off the pace, and comes down, cags that 29 of John Schwartz, and then Crowe was there as well. I don't know what on earth happened to that 30 car to just drop 20 miles an hour.
Same. Could be maybe technical issues like the wheels, wheel failure, pedal failure. Weird. It's very weird.
Entered the corner fine and then just never picked the throttle back up and started to go down the hill. And again, it's in real life, if there's a mechanical issue with the car, there's an indication, right? There's sparks, there's smoke. Unfortunately, for our sake, if there's a technical issue with somebody's sim rig, to your point, wheel, pedals, shifter, you name it. Unfortunately for us, there's no visual indicator of it. So those are some of the mysteries of sim racing. But if something did go wrong for the 30 car there, obviously something had happened to affect how that car was going to drive on corner exit. And for the first time tonight, a quick yellow, right? We had a decent length run, just over 10 laps to kick it off. What about 24 since then? And now a really fast caution flag. Slow things down here. I would be surprised if Cruz Caudill does not decide to come down pit road. There's that static look as the pieces go flying, and it could have been a bigger wreck. We could have easily tacked in under the 3 or 4. Somebody lost the front bumper really late in that one, but they really clogged it up in the short chute. And I'm surprised here. Cruz Caudill, remember, stayed out to go to the race lead, immediately fell to 11th, Lorenzo, but doesn't come down pit road under this yellow either. We've got some takers back in the 20s, but that 13 ain't one of them.
Well, in my opinion, don't take my opinion as the expert opinion. I think that's over risking a little bit, don't you think?
There's the only thing I can think is some sort of decision to save sets of tires for the end of the race. Right. But I feel like if that was the decision, then you would see somebody, maybe go for 2 lefts. If you want to save like your prime tires, your right side tires, you'd toss some lefts on it to give you something, because in my opinion, it doesn't matter if you've got 8 sets of fresh tires at the end of the race if you're running 35th, right? So there is a balance, some sort of Venn diagram of track position and tire availability, and there has to be a balance between the two.
Yeah, I agree. And even though you might be thinking, I might minimize the damage, I might try to something different, or go with the mindset of yellow breed yellows here in Indianapolis, because we've seen every single restart has been a little bit feisty for our opinion, right? It had its fair share of drama, or cars going over here and there, having a little bit of an argy-bargy. So it could be the right strategy, but it's not the strategy I would try to put on only 43 laps in.
We've passed the 1/4 distance mark in this 400-mile contest, just a little bit under an hour since the green flag came out. So a 3 caution flag slow pace, all things considered, to start this race. If you kept this up, we'd be talking about a 12 caution flag race. Nothing that's been unheard of, but I will say typically the first quarter of the race will have more yellows than, say, the second and third quarters of the race. So we will see, do we get that long green flag run? Do we get that cycle of green flag pit stops? And how does that play in to everything else? Because if we went green to the end from here, we'd be in a really peculiar spot. You mentioned, drivers trying to get to like a 40 number on fuel and on their run. Well, we had a bunch of cars just come in and pit all back from 22nd on back. Jason Main's first car to do it, and they all took fuel only. Some of them may have taken 2 tires. If we all of a sudden broke out green to the end, those drivers could likely 2-stop to the end of the race. And I don't know if these other cars up here who have only been out for an additional 7 laps, I don't know if they can make that number work, right? It's a little bit tighter. So I know we are only 44 laps in, but we're already seeing some indicators based on what the cars at the back have been doing, that they're already starting to think long term and think about gas.
Yeah, now I think they're going to be thinking about, like you just said, the gas and everything. Maybe the aggression might dim a little bit more than what we saw earlier on, where your only thought was move up the field. But I could be the bearer of maybe different news. I might just say to you, Evan, I don't think the status quo is going to change. I don't think they're going to be thinking about fuel. I think they're going to be thinking of separation, just aggression out of the gate once we get the green flag again.
We got Tommy Gossett in chat with us on the iRacing Sports Network, and joining us on the iRacing Twitch as he rides P2 in this Brickyard 400. So for his sake, I hope he doesn't have to listen to us yap and mutes us at least on the green, but happy to have Tommy and all of the rest of you joining us on the live Twitch chat. Pace car down and in. Garrett Main's going to be in control once more. Your leaders all working on 8-lap older tires. There's fresh tires, 21st on back. Green flag in the air. It's an okay jump on the bottom. Conklin gives enough of a push for the one to come up and clear himself over Gossett before diving back down to the inside.
I think there's a little also of a blockade on that high line and yellow flag one more time.
I saw smoke at the very entrance to turn number 1, and there's a car missing up front. It is John Schwartz. Vincent Crowe also exclaimed over the radio something to the effect of what happened. Not going to quote word for word. And those two drivers happened to line up nose to tail with each other. So that gives us a pretty good indicator of where we're looking on the grid. Look for the 29 car, top side of the racetrack as they go into turn number 1. They're 2x2, and I don't know if Schwartz was trying to split the gap, right? I think he was trying. I don't think he missed the corner. I think he was behind the 22, next to the 31. He tried to split the gap and throw it in aggressive ahead of the 31 to get under the 22 at the same time, and paid the price with his night being done. It's a move that can win you the race if it's a restart at lap 145, not 45. I just don't know right here. See the gap? I think he's going for that hole, and that's not big enough for a race car.
It's odd. Do you see a hole right there? I don't. So it's a little bit of a odd strategy pick for a restart. I would wait maybe until the backstretch to try to make moves, but you never know. You might have. He wanted to have a shot. Well, it backfired badly.
Yeah, it's a lot of damage on Schwartz's machine. He's going to have to come down, try to get that thing fixed up. And because we gave a shout-out to Tommy under the last yellow, we'll give a shout-out to Jay Sanchez as well, who's also in the Twitch chat with us. Again, I don't know if I would want to have to listen to me talk while I'm driving, but appreciate them being a part of tonight's coverage and broadcast nonetheless. Is kind of a half-hearted fake out there on the pit lane for some of the drivers up front. I just think too short of green flag runs. You know, they've been out there for 10 laps, but it's been, what, 1.5, maybe 2 laps of which under green. So maybe a half-hearted fake out. I didn't think any of the leaders were coming.
You never know. At this point, I think, Evan, with my nearly 10 years of iRacing, I can say I've seen every tiny bit of weird things. So that is a possibility, but it's teammates. I think they're just messing with each other. So I think teammates might not be the possibility, but if you had someone from another team or something like that, that could be the case.
I'm sure all those Ryko guys are having fun running up front with the 4-year anniversary and all the other things that come with that, and running good in the iRacing Brickyard 400. Super Silver 48 joining us in chat asking, how does this work? And if you're joining us for maybe one of the first times, we'll remind you how all this plays out. So this iRacing Brickyard 400 is part of the NASCAR iRacing Series Open Calendar. Weekly races with both open and fixed setups where you can run on iRacing, full-length NASCAR Cup Series races all race long. Tonight we're covering the top split for the open setups. 2 things to take away from that open setup means what it would suggest. Drivers can modify whatever they want within the NASCAR regulation to these cars. If it was a fixed setup race, all the cars would be set up the same. Top split also means that every driver on iRacing has an iRating based on skill and results. There's about 6 or 7 different splits of this race that fired off tonight. This is the top split, the highest rated drivers on the sim. They're competing for points on the NIS calendar, yes, but the fact that this Brickyard 400 falls on the iRacing Special Events calendar also means that, well, it's a major event on the sim and comes with some extra bragging rights. So those are all the things on the line here tonight in this iRacing Brickyard 400. And if you're an iRacing member, maybe you're just joining us on the stream tonight, you'll compete on a later split at some other point this weekend. Plenty of opportunities for drivers to get behind the wheel this weekend, and that's a good perspective right there that shows us the lights out on top of the iRacing pace car. So we'll get back underway next time by.
And Maynard and Conklin having a little bit of a friendly RG-bargy discussion. Beef.
I know back in the day you would see the, I say back in the day as if it wasn't, 4 or 5 years ago, you'd have crew members get out on pit road and they'd kind of pull up the side skirt a little bit with their foot to try to get a little bit of extra downforce. I don't know if they're helping each other's aerodynamics by rubbing the paint off each other's door too much, but they're having some fun up front.
Yeah, it's all good. There's no problem in having fun on the track. I'm all for it.
Although you mentioned, just about seen everything in 10 years on the sim. I've seen teammates messing around under the yellow and take each other out. In fact, my teammates are probably the people I would trust the least on joking around with me on the yellow flag. So it makes me a little bit nervous, that's for sure.
Well, 100%. I've seen teammates taking each other out on lap 1 just because he was trying to heat up the tires on a straight line. Trust me, I think that's one of the most heinous things I've ever seen. But for you, Evan, I know you have your track record in ovals. Your track record is deeper than mine, for sure.
Well, let's see what is the next chapter of this race as we're almost 50 in. It is going to be Garrett Maines on the inside, control car, and then Sean Conklin, who led the opening 11 laps, as the pole sitter to the outside. Some teammates lined up behind them looking to give a push as we go back green into turn number 1. Green flag in the air. It's a good jump for the 1 car, but he doesn't get much of a drafting help as he left Gossett off of the line. So here comes Conklin, pushed by the 2 of Schneider. He keeps it out to the outside, but off of 2, he gets clear for the lead as Maines.
And you can see Gossett trying to defend that inside line from Schneider. Schneider's going to have a little bit of a gap going on the outside line. There he goes, and 3 wide nearly at the back.
We've seen 3 wide go wrong tonight, but these drivers know, despite the risks, restarts are their best opportunities to make up positions in bulk. It is Ryko 1, 2, 3, 4 as they enter turn number 4, led by Maines, then Conklin, Schneider, and Gossett. Clayton Hoffman, the first Toyota in P5. You can't find a bow tie till you get back to Derek Kiteman as his Chevrolet rides in the number 8 spot. There's Vicidius Murray. We've talked about the 15 car a couple of times tonight. Bit of an up and down adventure. He's in the middle of a lot of these cars that are jam-packed in through the midfield.
Yeah, the Brazilian's doing a really good job so far in this race, trying to keep himself out of trouble. Had a few moments right there, but all in all, managed to survive the whole ordeal and staying just outside that top 15, where you can kind of say it's a little bit of a safety net being within that top 15, because you know you gotta drive up and you're going to be able to keep up with the field, but you cannot let go one bit, otherwise you're just going to start to climb down at the back. And Conklin going on Maines.
It Conklin on the inside. Maines punching back on the outside, though. They're going to try to make it work again. 2 wide through the turn. Maines led at the stripe. Conklin nose in front into the corner. All the way down below the white line, but shy of the rumble strips that can upset these cars really easy. Center of the corner again on the throttle. Off in the entry to 2. Back on throttle off. Maines gave it too much. There was some fire out of the pipes as he had to get out of the gas. Conklin back to the race lead. Here comes Jacob Schneider under the 1 car, trying to double up on Maines, who has led 36 laps in this race. Maines gets his footing back quick, though, and is right back on the defense.
Yeah, but the thing is, does that help Maines in the long run? You know, I know you're battling against your teammate and everything. That is all cool, all said and done. But doesn't that compromise your tires a little bit? And like we're saying, you got to think about your long run and your fuel as well.
In longest run, we've seen 24 laps, but the problem is the one time you think, I don't need to save my tires, I'm going to give it 110% and be aggressive, that's the one time you get a long green flag run, and then it drives like a sack of potatoes after 20 laps. So you always have to keep the long run in mind, and you can see here, it's a long single file snake down the backstretch. If the leader kind of leans to the inside, off of the wall. The car behind him will follow. The car behind will follow. They'll kind of serpentine down the back straightaway as they all want to stay in line for the draft to bring them all up to speed. Sean Conklin started this race on pole with a 52.216. That was his pole lap in this race. Race pace, though, even with the draft, these drivers running in the mid-52s. Best lap 52.760 for Conklin. So even the draft not quite at quali trim, and there's a good 3-box look as you're on board with the Challenger lined up there in the number 2 spot as Maines wants to get back to the top position.
You know what's also interesting, looking from the perspective, the amount of wheel turn that you do around the corners and try to minimize the snappiness of the car. You really don't want to, go aggressively, as I think Conklin hit the wall a little bit.
The other thing I noticed there is when you're turning the wheel to the right, never a good thing. And that was a little bit of that there as they were getting sideways on the exit of the corner, but it was a bigger mistake from Conklin than it was for Maines, and back to the race lead goes Garrett Maines as these two continue to swap the lead in and out. Maines has now led 37. Conklin has led 13 laps in this race. The only other driver to lead a lap, Cruz Caudell, stayed out. He led 3. His race essentially done. 9 laps down, out of the race car, and in 32nd position. It has been a story of these two thus far, as you can see Tommy Gossett right there tucked in line. He watched it on from the number 4 spot. Jacob Schneider watched it on from the 3rd. There hasn't been a lot of big movement. The cars who started inside of the top 8 more or less are running in those positions right now. Now, when you get to the midfield, things are different. Brad Newman up 24 spots. James Holzer up 18 spots. The midfield, plenty of movers, but they've kind of yet to be able to crack that Ryco barrier of the top 5 or 6.
Yeah, and talking about Newman, we see him as well involved in his fair share of drama, but keep it in a consistent pace to stay within the reach of that top 10. Got into that aggressive mindset. I gotta go give my all every single lap that I gotta run. And Evan, even though might lead to some displeasure of the drivers that he got himself involved earlier on in the race.
It really is a marathon, not a sprint. You see one car limping into the pit lane at the front of the shot there. None of the race leaders any concern there, but obviously some damage, and I'll try to confirm that car number just to let you know who went off of the racetrack there. I think that may have been John Schwartz, who's down pit road. Again, he was back in the 30s. It is him, so nothing amongst the leaders, no incident that triggers a yellow flag. But the battle for the lead is on again. Conklin gets back to the deck lid, to the bumper, and now to the inside of Garrett Maines. Inside or outside? What line do you want to have? The 3, a little bit loose that time, squeezes the 1 car up, use it every inch. It does not look like a teammate-on-teammate battle as they're giving it everything.
It looks like it is the final laps of the NASCAR E-Series, doesn't it? They're still going side by side, giving it their all, burning a little bit of rubber. And they know the teammates behind Schneider, Gossett, and eventually Hoffman, if they want to, are not going to go aggressive on them. You can even see Schneider being the 3rd car of this train, lifting a little bit of gas so he doesn't get caught up or any surprises from the 2 in the front.
And you mentioned the NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. Of course, they were here at the Brickyard earlier this week. It was Daniel Falkenham getting his first career win in that series, becoming the 67th different driver all-time in that series' 15-year history to win. Garrett Maines trying to erase what was a bit of a lackluster or non-notable night for him after he started that race 23rd and finished 17th. Maybe back here in this 500 split for a little bit of redemption, and you continue to look off of his bumper as he moves up. The car behind him moves up. They're always going to chip and chase on the straightaways to have that draft work in their favor, as now a little bit of separation slowly building amongst, I'd say, maybe 6 or 7 cars back in line. You get a bit of a gap. Not right now, though, up front. Conklin, big slide off the corner to carry the speed through. Thought he was going to the bottom of the one car, but he'll wait.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of the textbook of, you know, the cars that are slightly worn down. You had your fair bits going side by side. The car is going to get a little bit slidey coming out of the corners, so you just have to find your way to try to get that foot down at the right place at the right time, and so you can avoid the wall basically. And that's what they're doing. And now here comes Conklin with a really good run once again.
There's that good split screen look again off of the back of the race leader on the top of your screen, and looking forward to the race leader on board with the challenger. Conklin on the bottom, drives right into the bumper, can't even see the Ford license plate as they get through the center, but it is difficult to carry that speed off enough to be able to pull alongside somebody. A little bit of a slow exit for Conklin. Schneider, does he force the issue from third? No, but you know, those Ryko cars, they're doing their very best to give their, you know, screenshotter as many opportunities to get some nice picks inside of the sim as possible, as they put those cars bumper to bumper to bumper on the podium.
Yeah, absolutely. Question is, I wonder what, like, the guys from, you know, that are not part of Ryko, because Ryko has a really good foothold. Top 4 is for them. Hoffman is the 5th guy, the first guy that is not fully Ryko, is not running the Ryko scheme. And then you have Pierce. I think Pierce is running a Team Connie livery from, no, actually, not a Connie livery, but a Ryko one. Those Team Connie guys are what they're thinking. You know, what you got to do, what can they do in terms of setups mid race, so they can try to have an upper edge on the Ryko guys, because from what it looks like, they're running the field and dominating without even a moment's notice.
And it's just fascinating to watch them go from the very outside wall on the entry to the very outside wall on the exit. And I mean, look at all those cars follow each other in line. You almost get a little bit of a tunnel vision at times, right? You're basing so much of your corner, because on some of the onboard looks, we've been able to tell when you're that close to the bumper of a car in front of you, it's a little bit difficult to get your bearings on the racetrack, right? I mean, you may not be able to see, you know, the spot on the wall, if it's those orange cones that kind of indicate how many feet you are away from the exit, or a specific, you know, sponsor on the wall, or a line on the asphalt that you use as your indicator for your braking or your let-off point. If you can't see that with the car in front of you, if one car makes a mistake, you're kind of following them into the corner. That's how you will see incidents where not just one car hits the wall, but you get 2, 3, 4 of them all lined up in a row driving into the fence, because you are using each other as a reference point when you're that close.
Yeah, and for racing, especially in ovals like this, and right now I don't think it's going to be a major problem, because you're just following the other car. But let's just say crunch time, final laps, 10 final laps, using your teammate as a reference can be a dangerous thing, right? It's a dangerous game that you're going to be playing, and you really don't want to be plunging yourself in it. So you got to take it cautiously every single lap that you go on, so you don't drive the same line as your opponent, which is the easiest thing to do, regardless if you're on the top split or bottom split or the mid split.
Those shots so good at giving you a perspective of just how coordinated this high-speed chaos is. 194 miles an hour as they headed off and into turn number 1 that time. Maines has been able to hold for several laps consecutively for the first time in some time. As the Ryko dominance continues, we jump back here to just outside of the top 8 or so. Good reference car is that 5 of Holzer, the bright yellow and red car. He's P9 at the moment. The bright green, almost teal 16's the brand new Mitsubishi. But look at that massive gap there. your top 18 cars, more or less, in a big train, and then there is a 4-second difference between Matt Cox in 18th and Charles Wembley in 19th. That was that big gap that you saw, and then it is, even further discombobulated from that point back. But these top 18 doing an impressive job of being pretty even on pace with one another, all things considered.
Yeah, I'm looking at the laps right here. The laps for the top 18, I think the slowest one I've seen last lap was actually Matt Cox. He's doing a 53.650, but half a second slower than what Maines did on the last lap. But the delta between the top 18 in general has just been 1/10 of a second. That's exactly nothing. So it's impressive what the job they're doing, even though they are several spots back from the top 3, let's just say.
A couple of fun comments about the Ryko kind of duopoly being broken up by that car 5th in line there for Clayton Hoffman, just messing things up a little bit. Roger Pierce as well with the colors and kind of mess it in with the Ryko domination that we've seen thus far. I see Bergoli in chat wishing a happy birthday to the Ryko team, cheering for them to get a birthday win. If we've had a couple of drivers in our chat with us over the course of this broadcast. If you're cheering for a driver or a team in specific, feel free to root them on as you watch tonight's coverage here with RaceSpotTV on the iRacing Esports Network. A move for position back in about 12th spot. The 7, Matt DiCianni's got it. Andrew Navarro wants it. He goes to the bottom in turn 3.
I don't know if the move is going to be able to be done on the entry. He's going to be able to stick with it. And actually, he does. DiCianni didn't fight too much on that outside spot, just losing the position quietly to Navarro as they go outside of turn number 4.
So it's a spot gained for Andrew Navarro as he slowly chips away spot by spot. Started 15th. He's now up to 12th. Still with a little bit of work to do, but plenty of opportunities when the cars are still this close together to be able to make passes for position. You see those positions gained or lost on the scoring pylon. Garrett Maines, an impressive +8, is the biggest mover until you get back to Holzer and Newman, as those cars are both up about 18 positions or so. But in front of them is what's surprising, right? There's normally someone had a mistake, but -1, +2, -1, -3, +1, more or less. Those names in the top 8 have been up there for the entirety of this race thus far, and most of the yellow flags and incidents have been coming from about the teens or the 20s.
Yeah, which we can expect to be the way to go right early on in this race. Maybe whenever we tick down to the final laps, this could change because it's going to get a little bit feisty. But we can see now, again, Charles Wembley, you just mentioned him earlier on, trying to still retain some positions in the race and still got involved in the first yellow flag and doing a really good recovery run, up 1 spot going to 19th.
Yeah, right as we mentioned, the teens and the 20s, we get to look at one of the good battles there. These are the lead cars of, I don't know if it's fair to call it the second pack, right? But I mentioned there was a very clear divide from 18th and 19th spot to split the field up. This is 19th on back. And Nolan Hodgson looking to go for another one, trying to get to the inside of the 17 of Charles Wembley for 18th. Couldn't make it stick on the bottom. Now, in an Indy car, I don't know if you would dare try to keep a car on the outside through the corner, but these stock cars have the benefit of fenders, which means you can lean on each other and kind of use only 1.5 lanes of space instead of 1. But we've seen a lot of impressive 2-wide action, and I've seen the inside and the outside line win out in a lot of those fights. It hasn't been one spot being completely dominant.
Yeah, I think there isn't a dominant line over here in this race. Normally, for Indy cars, you just mentioned, right, you really don't want to be side by side going through a corner. Even though you are maybe on the high line or the bottom line attempting an overtake, staying side by side is just way too risky. The problem is sometimes for Indy cars, the high line actually becomes a priority as Brad Newman comes into the pit lane. The first program, 31 laps. Interesting.
He's down and in. It's a little bit shy of a full run. We know that because he pitted on the same lap as everybody else around him. 92 laps to the end is interesting because if he wants to go for a two-stopper, he would have to go about 46 laps or so from this point to the end, which we will see if that's doable. But Newman, on his own accord, came down pit road as he was running in the number 10 spot. So that is not a damaged car in the 20s, in the 30s to be disregarded. This is a top 10 race car that came in. We will see how it plays out. And also pit road here, so long and slow that you saw for a brief moment there, the race leaders in the same shot as Newman as they were coming off of turn 4. He was leaving pit road. Now it's Andrew Navarro down pit road, 32 laps in. So if everybody comes in this window, we could be looking at a 3-stop strategy to the end of the race. We'll wait to see if these big names, the Mainses, the Schneiders of the world, do they reciprocate? Jacob Schneider, first time tonight. He's been all the way up to the number 2 spot. Conklin struggling a little bit as that 3 car has fallen to 4th. That may be the lowest we've seen him yet tonight.
Which is the one thing you really don't want to be going into the halfway portion of the race, right? You really want to find yourself into those sticky spots. You really want to try to be within the top 15. More drivers coming in. I think that's Johnny that is coming in, and Paul Hill as well.
2 more takers, and now Newman looks like not so off cycle after all. So we have seen 4 top cars come down pit road. Still waiting on the race leaders, top 5 cars to make that decision, but very clearly, green flag pit stop window is open. It is the first time we've seen green flag pit service tonight in this race. Conklin has led so many laps in this race. He has slid all the way down to the number 4 spot. He's now being hounded by the Clayton Hoffman number 6 car behind him. Those are those 2 cars center of your screen now. And I don't know if Jacob Schneider is going to get to it before we get to green flag pit stops, as now here goes Hoffman making his move to the inside of the 3-car. Conklin really now falling off on the long run, but Jacob Schneider's putting some legitimate pressure on Garrett Maines for the race lead. We've yet to see Schneider lead this race.
That would be the 3rd Ryko driver to lead this race, though. And I think from Maine's perspective, now that he doesn't have Conklin by his side, I think he's got to have a little bit of a work with his Ryko teammate. But the question is, I don't think the number 2 is going to make a move it right now. I think he's just playing for the gas game, trying to go for the long run, as they're starting to see guys in the field already doing their pit stops.
Had about 2 or 3 laps there consecutively where there was a taker every time. Have yet to see somebody else come back down and in, as Conklin again now scored P5 with Hoffman making the pass. And you're watching the top 2. There's a lot of those identically painted cars, but you can use the scoring pylon on the left-hand side of your screen as a reference. The 1 car, the leader, is Maines. The 2 car in second is Schneider, and here we go. Schneider to the inside. Does Maines force the issue? Put him 2 by 2 into turn 3. He does not. Maybe looking to cross over on the exit. Not a run in the short chute, and new race leader at lap number 73, Jacob Schneider, to the point at Indianapolis.
Yeah, didn't take what I would say, work the field and things like that. So I don't know if they're going to try to do the what they call the exchange of the toe, just try to what I would say. Exchange his draft, try to make an overtake on the corners, something that you would do in Indy cars. But I don't think you can do that in NASCAR. The cars are way heavier and it's much more complicated for do such a thing. So looking forward to see how this one will go for Schneider. But again, one more guy.
And I think worthwhile noting that's kind of the first time we've seen Maines let somebody go. Now, you can't see me, I'm doing some air quotes because it did kind of look like he thought about if he had the run in the short chute, he would have tried to cross him over, but for many of the battles between Baines and Conklin, we had seen somebody get a run, somebody make it too wide, and the other driver did not, go for the crossover or let them go. They would force the issue, lean on each other. So maybe a slight indicator that later on in this run, drivers a little bit more aware of the fact that their car isn't 110% stable and maybe giving each other, I'm not saying 5 feet, just a half a foot, right? Just a half a foot of buffer, play a little bit safer. Maybe an indicator, of course, of the fact that we're on the longest green flag run of this race. When we saw all those cars coming down pit road, kind of seemed like, all right, we're all going for the 3-stopper. The magic number to be able to go to the end of the race on a 2-stop strategy is about 42 laps or so. Jacob Schneider and company have to go maybe 45, 46. They're 38 laps on this current run. So if they could get to that hypothetical number, which is just my math and not the spotter math or the crew chief math, we're looking at them staying out for maybe an additional 5+ laps. We'll see if they can do that.
Yeah, I think there's a good possibility. Main slight over usage of the accelerator a little bit. I think aided with the fact that the car's starting to get a little bit, more worn, so the rear is going to step out of more and more as the run goes on. But I think 42, given the fact that they had yellow flags and everything, it might be a doable number. You're not going to be out of the ballpark, I think, with that number, Evan. I would say maybe 40. I was going to say 40 might be the way or the golden number for them to go into the pit lane. And thinking about the long run as the other 2 pit stops go.
And there's no guarantee that, of course, we get to play the strategy out. But that goes back to the story that we talked about earlier. Is a couple of drivers making some moves. That's the 14 on the inside. Corey Hines fighting the 8 of Derek Heitman. Contact off of turn 1. Holzer's got a front row seat. Let's join him for it. Big shove to the outside. That's going to give Heitman the bite he needed to clear the 14. Straightaway a little bit too short for Holzer to follow him, and the 5 tucks in line.
Might be me, but didn't Hines get a little bit aggressive into the entry of turn number 3 to make Holzer actually, check up into that outside line?
Sent him all right, that's for sure, and we've seen a lot of it tonight. Again, the push helps, but you also, if you get shoved into the corner, your braking point's going to be different because you might be going 2, 3, 4, 5 miles an hour faster. We've seen drivers push somebody out of the way to that same effect, and just as quickly as it ended, it's back on again. Hines may be the better car right now, continuously challenging the 8, but just isn't able to carry the speed off the corner. These turns feel really flat, but you can feel that banking come in handy on the top side when the 8 gets to run. And again, almost a spitting image of what we saw last time. The 8 gets pushed clear, Hines can't make the pass, and the 5 can't get in between them.
Yeah, but this time, actually, Holzer had a better entry into turn number 3 than he got outside number 4. And, you can see now Hyman coming in for his pit stop. 42 laps. Evan, you're right on the ballpark with this one.
He's in 42 laps on fuel. There are 81 laps to go in this race, so that means if he can do 42 2 more times, he is good. The bank is open, as they say, with Wembley and Heitman down pit road, and now we can expect everybody else to be down at any moment. As the next time by the Yard of Bricks, we're going to be halfway home in iRacing's return to the Brickyard 400. Still monitoring this battle with James Holzer and Corey Hines, of course, with Hyman dropping out of it to drop it down pit road. Maybe took some of the flair out of the dramatics. Do we have any takers from the leaders this time by? Schneider stays out. He's led the last 6 laps straight. But we have a feeling that more are going to be coming with each passing lap because, again, I think we're inside of the fuel number to make it happen.
Yeah, I think once they reach about 81, 82 laps, which it might be the next lap or even in 2. I think that's where we're going to see, I think, the main bulk. Oh, Slidey for Gossett outside at number 2. That would be the right way to go for you to think 40-40 until this race is over.
That was a big scare for Tommy Gossett with all of the right wheel that he put into that. Again, we're talking about how drivers will want to minimize wheel input. They can, of course, cheat the setups a little bit so the car turns left really good and doesn't turn right real bad. So unlike your street car, when you got to make a right-hand turn, or in this case, a left-hand turn at a light, you're not cranking the wheel. They're barely moving it. But anytime the wheel cocks back to the right towards the wall, that's some sketchy business. Sean Conklin, Miller Bonds, down pit road. More takers coming behind them to the pit road commitment cone. They got to slow things down here. Pit road speed of 55 miles an hour. PB Henry, Matt Cox, Nolan Hodson, more cars down pit road.
Yeah, now the main bulk of the cars coming in. Like I said, lap 81, 82, I think we're going to see nearly everyone at the front doing their pit stops and all. So I'm not even surprised to see that even coming on. Question is, can they last 40 laps once they come out of the pit lane and do that 40-40 that we just mentioned?
4 tires on, off, and away we go. Under the yellow flag, drivers may be less concerned on pit road about mistakes. There is plenty of opportunities to make mistakes under green flag. Of course, you got to line it up to pit road. It is one of the easier pit road entries, I'll say, on the NASCAR calendar. It's a short shoot. There's plenty of time to brake, but these drivers will always push it a bit too far. As Schneider in from the top spot, Maines, Gossett, Pierce, Hines, Price. The big things are, you're not in a big line. You don't have a reference point for the lead car, so don't overshoot the box on your way in. And then you almost have to tiptoe a little bit on that access road. That is very unique to Indianapolis Motor Speedway that you don't see at a lot of the other NASCAR ovals, is walking the fine line on that flat exit lane that they have to take all the way from right here, pit road exit, as the 2 cars Schneider leads. You can't blend up with the racing surface until the back straightaway. You can cheat the white line here a little bit, but you can't go to the racing surface. So they make that like a road course corner almost, Lorenzo. They go all the way to the right and then apex the pit lane exit to carry as much speed as they can.
Yeah, which is it's an interesting thing, right? I saw that we see that in Indy cars as well, for you to go all the way down south line, for you to kind of angle yourself to coming into a better entry angle on the pit road outside of inside of turn number 2, and try to get as much speed as you can. And the weird thing is, normally you would say, oh, but that's illegal. Not actually. You can actually do that normally and don't get penalized by the iRacing services in terms of, am I going too far or not?
As long as you don't go above the second white line, which is the racing surface, it's fair game. So you're going to want to go as far as you can. The grass is tricky, right? If you get any of your tires, left sides, right sides, in the grass, that car's going to be gone. We saw an accident like that on Tuesday with the Coke Series race. 2 cars tried to go side by side through the access road. One of them went off into the grass, caused an accident, almost wiped out the entire field who was running on the racetrack ahead of them. Junsa Lim gets a lap led in this cycle. So did Clayton Hoffman. Hoffman was in last time, and Lim is down pit road this time. Jacob Klein down pit road from the number 2 position. That leaves us with Jason Maines and maybe 2 or 3 more cars yet to pit. Maybe only Mark Paget still needing to pit, as Aaron Russell now also comes down pit road. And now we start to think, for where is our net race leader? And I'm eyeing the 4 of Andrew Navarro, right? He's already pitted. We saw the likes of Brad Newman pit early, Matt DiCianni pit early. No, those are not the names, Lorenzo, who we were watching leading this race, but because they pitted before our leaders, they got fresh tires sooner. They started putting down fast laps while those other leaders were on old tires, and they have been making up time. So they're going to be the net winners in all of this. You see the stint, right? Maines 36, that one's got a pit. That's Jason Maines, by the way. Garrett Maines, the one down in P8. Paget 37, he's got a pit here. Maybe they come this time on through. So I think Andrew Navarro is going up, cycling through as the net leader in all of this. Now, that's not to say, oh, well, why didn't the rest of the leaders just pit earlier? Because now the advantage has flipped. So Navarro, Newman, DiGianni, they've been making up time on the better tires. Well, now that the cars that had stayed out have pitted, now they're on the oldest of tires. So Schneider, Maines, Conklin, they've all got about 10 lap better tires than the names we've been talking about, and we will start to see them reel it in. That's why there is no one-stop call on, is it the short pit, is it the long pit, which one's better, pros and cons to both. So yes, big win for Navarro, Newman, and DiGianni, but now they're going to be slower on this run, and I suspect we'll see those real fast Ryko cars start to reel them in.
Yeah, that is going to eventually maybe come in a few laps. I think they're going to catch him up fast, and there's the opportunity for you to go fast. But the thing is, once you go side by side and you try to battle with these guys, you're wasting your rubber. So there's a good chance that it's going to equal out as well as the run goes on. So this could work in advantage for DiGianni and Newman and Navarro if they play their cards right.
Waiting only on Jason Maines to come down pit road before we can put a nice pretty bow tie on this pit cycle, but we are officially past the halfway point in this Brickyard 400, and we now start to count down. 74 laps to go this time by. Maines chatting with the 30 machine and Joe Torres behind those two, drafted a little bit. Torres 13 laps down. Maines telling him to go on through. And again, Andrew Navarro will eventually lead his first lap in this race. Paul Hill, somebody else who's been, I'd say, pretty quiet in this race, despite, having a good car, started 30th. He's up 25 spots, all courtesy of being one of the first cars to come down pit road, and has inserted himself into the conversation with a lot of these heavy hitters. Now again, Schneider, Maines, 10-lap better tires. They're going to catch him. They're likely going to pass him here, but right now they're fighting with each other behind him, as that's a big pass. Garrett Maines passing Sean Conklin. Those two were the kind of second best runners before the pit cycle, and they just swapped out that spot as Maines getting around Jacob Schneider, actually, I should say. Schneider was the leader before we came down pit road. So that's a big move there for Garrett Maines.
Yeah, and I think he's going to try to set the way forward for him and his teammate right behind him, Jacob Schneider, as they have now Paul Hill right in front of them. DiGianni not far ahead as well. As you can see, the number one moving down into the inside.
Down to the inside, Paul Hill with the net gain, now going to be pretty defenseless on the older tires against some of the very best. Literally, the number 1 and number 2 ranked drivers based on iRating, piloting the number 1 and number 2 cars. That 2 machine of Schneider needs a little bit extra. There he goes. He's clear through the center of the turn. And now Schneider's got to play catch up to his teammate, because if these cars who pitted later, lost track position, will eventually cycle back to the top of the mountain, the fact that Garrett Maines passed Schneider's a big deal, and Schneider caught that 7 of Matt DiGianni, a little bit of a bad time on corner exit of the 4. These two are really spreading way out. Garrett Maines putting in a lot of aggression early in this run to separate himself. He wants to be the clear hard charger.
Yeah, absolutely. He has to kind of set the way forward for everybody, and you can see those Ryko cars already getting a lot of ground on everybody. I think Paul Hill or DiGianni once again nearly going into the wall. I think he didn't clink the wall, but he's playing a little bit with his fate right now every time he goes into turn number 2.
Another spot for Garrett Maines as he passes Brad Newman. That was a pass for the second position. Again, we knew this was coming as these cars swung to being at a tire disadvantage to a tire advantage. And now Garrett Maines is about 2 seconds away from Andrew Navarro. Navarro's last lap, 53.627. It was a 52.901 for Maines. So that means he should get there in about 2.5 laps.
Yeah, something like it. Look at the last laps. 53.6 for Navarro, 52.9 for Garrett Maines. And this was with the overtake, right? So imagine what he will do with once that he has clean air and nobody in front for him to take an overtake. Is Conklin having some trouble overtaking Luciani?
Luciani continues to slide back as Conklin, to your point there, makes the move on him again. All of this, what we were expecting, and it's making the leaderboard on the left-hand side look like a Christmas tree as it lights up with a pass here and a spot loss there as it all continues to shuffle up. Means that last lap goes a whole 0.9 of a second better than Andrew Navarro and should pass him maybe by the time they get to the back straightaway the next time around. So it's also not too early to talk about how on opposite ends of this strategy these two cars are. Yes, they are both likely on a two-stop strategy, meaning they both only need one more stop to the end of the race, but Navarro has only been out there for 22 laps already, whereas Maines 10. So their pit stop to the end of this race, if we stay green, will also not align with each other, and we will likely see more of this. Here comes the one car. There's a lapped car in between them for Kagan Fleckenstein, who's going to be a little bit timid passing your leader. Let's see if it affects Garrett Maines as his eyes are set on P1. Through the lap traffic and now to the inside. Garrett Maines going to take the race lead back after Andrew Navarro leads 5. And the man who's led more laps than anybody else in this Brickyard 400 is back in the driver's seat.
Yeah, easier than expected. Just I thought he was going to make the overtake at the halfway point of the back straight. And a little bit of a touch.
A lot of touch there as that nearly got messy. On board, as Jacob Schneider made contact with Andrew Navarro, he had to catch that race car. And again, this has been disastrous for Jacob Schneider. Really aggressive, almost spins it that time off of turn number 1. And I think a little bit of frustration for Schneider there, only in the fact that this goes back to after the pit stop, Lorenzo. He pitted as the leader. He beat his teammate Garrett Maines off of pit road. We knew those guys had more speed than what we've seen out of Navarro after Newman, and they would likely drive up front. But through that cycle, driving up front, Maines passed him. I think Maines was quicker, also passing the other cars. And now Schneider, who was leading the race, finds himself 1.1 second behind his teammate Garrett Maines, who's one of the very best. That's a big gap that if the two car wants to lead this race again, he's going to have to somehow find a way to make up.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to, I don't know if that has affected the tires a little bit because he had to go a little bit more aggressive. I don't know if there was even, you could consider a checkup into the corner, in between turn 1 and 2 for Schneider to overtake Navarro because he got so close that you can even see a potential pit maneuver move from Schneider right there, but somehow, some way, he managed to make it work into number 2. Now, I think he has pace. The question is, does he have tires?
The thing that hurt Maines, maybe in the slightest, was that he was, at some point, a little bit too aggressive on the opening run as Brad Newman pits again after only 25 laps. He cannot go to the end of the race from here, so he is squarely in 3-stop territory. That puts him in the minority on the strategy call, as I'd say probably 90% of cars going to go for the 2-stopper, but at some point Maines used up his stuff more than Schneider did, because otherwise Schneider would not have been able to chase him down, right? Maines still very fast, but Schneider caught him late, so Schneider saved something extra. Well, the fact that Maines was really aggressive off pit road, past Schneider, was faster and more aggressive passing the other cars, could lead to the same situation, right? Is Schneider not struggling, but simply just taking it a little bit easier and saving a little bit more for the later part of this race, as now the 8 car Heitman, it's his turn to make a move on DiGianni.
Yeah, a little bit of a swap between Team Conti drivers as now Heitman moves up 1 spot. And DiGianni, just, again, struggling with those late tires. 25 laps against 17 is just going to hurt more and more and more the day out of the number 7 driver. But still within that top 10, I like what they're doing. They're trying something different. They're not shy of trying a different strategy to keep up with the field. Maybe have a little bit of the luck of the draw down the line when this race gets into its final laps and potential yellow flags. But you got to try something different to try to combat what the rival team drivers are doing.
And it's funny that we feel like we just wrapped up the storyline of a green flag pit cycle, and if you're DiGianni or Hill, you're maybe no more than 15 laps away from coming down pit road again. We knew this would happen, right? We had those 3 yellows in the opening 40 and said that's not too surprising because it's the second and third quarters of the race where things really start to open up, and we've seen that already. I'm going to count it because Newman's been down twice. I'll count it. We've gotten to 2 cycles of green flag pit stop, at least for one of the strategies that these drivers are hoping will win them this Brickyard 400. There you see the 11 in the 1 car. They go battling side by side. I should say the 11 in the 7 car, as that was Matt DiGianni losing a spot to Pierce. Again, that's going to be a theme. All those cars who pitted earlier, Hill, DiGianni, they're going to lose spots, and they'll make them up again. It makes this race more dynamic, when even though I'd consider these cars to be on the same strategy, their pit numbers are different, so their tires are different. And it also means that some of these battles are not quite what we saw earlier. Look at that 14 of Hines looking to the bottom. Oh no! Sends the 12. Miller Bonds. How did he not wreck that race car?
Wow. I'm surprised we're still green after this. Oh, he hit the wall.
Yeah, that car is struggling. That was a high-speed game of chicken. It looks like neither of them really had a good understanding of who was going to make the move, who was going to let who go, and they went for the same piece of real estate, and it was almost a big accident. Watch this, 3-car tango. Car in the middle wants to pass the car in front of him. Car in third wants to pass the car in the middle, and they just don't agree on who gets to go first.
Complete lack of communication between the drivers in the field right there, but I'll tell you, maybe because it's NASCAR cars, I think, and they're heavier and they're coming and they have to break into the corner. We didn't have a yellow flag situation like that, but here they go one more time.
And going at it again is Bonds on the inside. This time at DiGianni wasn't able to get the speed necessary off of the corner, but look at that crafty side draft. Put the right front of his car on the left rear of the 7, pulled the draft alongside, and was able to salvage the pass on that straightaway. That was a really level-headed and calculated move for the 12 car, as in front of him, 14 of Corey Hines, just now getting around Paul Hill. Hill now dealing with the 5 of James Holzer. That's the red and yellow Ford Mustang on the bottom. They're about nose-to-nose into the corner, but Hill going to let him go. Hill on 12-lap older tires, as DiGianni, 29-lap old tires total, pitted the same lap that Paul Hill did, is also down pit road. And with 60 to go, Lorenzo, I think he also now stakes his flag in the ground on the 3-stop strategy, because he's not going to be able to go to the end from this point.
No, he's not. I think for now, DiGianni might go on a 30-30 strategy if you think about it, right? You have the advantage of not overfueling the car, or putting full fuel, all the cans in it. So that's the good thing for DiGianni. The counterpart is you might have to get a little bit of luck of the draw as the race goes on. You're going to need a yellow flag eventually for you to level out with the rest of the field. Question is, will he get that, though?
And right on cue, after we mentioned his name, Paul Hill is also down pit road, and that just about does it for the kind of crowdfunders of the green flag pit cycle, those who were in first. And again, we were kind of thinking, is it going to be enough to go for a one-stop strategy from this point to the end, 2 stops total? That answer is no. I think the only other one would be Andrew Navarro. And it's interesting, Navarro's at a bit of a different spot, right? Those cars were back in 9th, 10th position, maybe felt like that they had to mix it up to try to win this race. Navarro in a top 5 spot, but on the same pit strategy of those cars, I would be maybe a little bit hesitant to say, yeah, he's going to go for the 3-stop strategy. He may try to make something else work given his position.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Because, like I said, you got to try something different if you really want to think about winning this race or even getting a good result up at this point. You gotta pull something out of the rabbit hat for you to, have a really good performance. As now Wembley comes into the pit lane for his Chicago Bear livery car, Toyota Camry car. Looking good. I like that livery, even though I'm not the fan of the team, though. Don't add me a Twitch chat or anything, please.
It feels like a free shot at the fact that the cars may be a little bit faster than the team, but I will always respect somebody who will support their team because it doesn't matter if the team that I grew up cheering for is in the dumpster. I'll still proudly represent their stuff, and fun to see a little bit of an NFL design on the car, although Charles Wembley is out of that car onto pit road, so his hopes of maybe winning a top split iRacing Brickyard 400 seemingly closing with that moment there. As we are inside now of 60 laps to go, again under green flag conditions, business really picks up. And with less than a minute every trip around, this Indianapolis Motor Speedway could be as near as within an hour of throwing the checkered flag on this race. Yeah,
clock winding down. If we get green flag all the way, apparently 50 more minutes. I think is that what I said? I had a little bit of an issue coming out of turn number 2.
Yeah, there's still opportunities here, even in the battle that we're watching there. That was Hodson and Sanchez back in 16th and 17th spot. Now you're looking at the 5 of Holzer. He's chasing down the number 14 of Cordy Hines in 7th and 8th position. 4 cars all lined up in a train. Even the slightest of difference, right? And we're not talking the first cars who pitted and the last cars, a 10 to 12 lap tire difference that we've been talking a lot about on this run. Even in this group, a 2-lap difference, a 3-lap difference could be so difficult to overcome. And we didn't see any variance, obviously, in the first third of this race because all those pit stops had happened under the yellow. Some drivers were off strategy, but for the most part, it was a fair fight. Driver A versus driver B, same tires versus same tires. This is a completely different part of the race where it is all long-term focused. You're making a pass now because of the decision that you made on tires and how you've been driving your car on this run. Now, we still have some packs. This is maybe the best example of it. With Fleckenstein, Hines, Holzer, and even Navarro, maybe to a lesser extent, starting to fall off the back. You'll still get your click. You'll still get your pack of cars. But certainly, they are way more spread out than they were earlier. And look at those intervals on the scoring pylon there. At one point, we were 20 laps into a run, and the top 7 cars were within 1 second of the race leader. Well, now you've got the top 5 within 9 seconds of the race leader.
What about, I think, prior to the first green flag pit stop, I think top 18 was about 9 seconds, if I remember correctly?
Yep.
No, it's insane. What can one pit stop and the strategy of tires and everything can do to the entire field?
And we know that these are all the top drivers. And I wish I had like a telestrator to draw this little grid that I'm trying to explain in my head, right? But when you have all the best drivers and they all launch at the same time, right? Start of a green flag run, same tires, their speed's going to be relatively similar. There are going to be some drivers who are better than others. That's the nature of it. But that gap between the fastest car and the slowest car gets bigger and bigger as the run goes on, because that's where all of those little things come in. The tire saving, the line, the aggression. That's how you build a gap like that. It's not like all of a sudden Navarro, Bonds, and Holzer got way slow. At the start of this run off pit road, they're probably running lap times very similar to Maines and Schneider. But as you go longer in the run, those speeds get further and further apart. And at this level of sim racing, that's what makes the difference on winning races. Qualifying for series is long run speed. It is the hardest thing to learn. Some may never master it, but learn it more with experience. That is the hardest thing, and it is the number one separator between the best and the good, and it is how you put a full run and a full race together.
Yeah, I think this is where the setups come in key, and having, like I just said before, you have these, setup builders, right? You have McConey, you have Raiko, you have Tincani, you have their drivers representing their teams, and it makes that thing of trying to get the edge on your opponent, trying to develop a car that not only is fast but can also provide you consistency through the laps, right? Which is the hardest part. The hardest thing you can do for a car is find consistency on a really good setup that can give you those laps and give you performance every single time that you go on the track, regardless if it is Indianapolis or a smaller oval like Martinsville or Bristol.
You saw Navarro pit there. He went longer than the other drivers that were on that same pit strategy as him, but still pitting at 52 laps to go. Not going to be enough for him to stop this race to the end. He will have to come back down. He will have the advantage of only needing to take a little bit less fuel when he comes down pit road. That could be the benefit in which he has over some of his fellow competitors, but it is not going to be enough to be a game breaker and get on a different look. As Sean Conklin in the number 3 car getting it overtaken there by Clayton Hoffman. That pass for 3rd and 4th on the racetrack. Some 5 seconds behind the leaders. It's a big move for Hoffman, who has had an opportunity to lead 1 lap in this race, and into the wall that time on the exit was Conklin.
Yeah, you can even see Hoffman also got a little bit loose, right, coming out of the corner. I don't know if they actually made contact of back bumper with the front bumper. Even they were too close coming out of the wall.
And now the 6 will pull away. He's the better car at this point in the run compared to the driver behind him in Conklin. And up front, it's been a bit of a fluctuation, but just want to check in and let you know Garrett Maines' advantage has shrunk. Once upon a time, I was talking about how big it was that Maines was faster through the traffic, faster to the front. He had built up about a 1.3 second advantage over Jacob Schneider. It is not time to hit the panic button yet, but it is smaller. Schneider within 0.6. In fact, I think a few laps ago, that was down to 0.4. So Maines either put a couple good laps together, or Schneider got held up a little bit because there is some traffic. You see that 23 directly behind him. Paul Hill's on, I think, better tires and is going to have to pass the 2. That's going to be an inconvenience to both of these leaders. But like we saw in the last run, as a general term, Schneider has been better than Maines on the long run. 0.7 seconds the gap now. Still a long way to go, but just keep your eye on those numbers. It's getting interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And it is just like what we said, right? We thought Schneider has a pace. You just mentioned he has that longer run pace. The question would come down to tires, especially when he made the overtake on Navarro, right? Because he got a too close call that could have made contact, and he had to use a little bit more of the car tires to try to make that overtake work. Now we ship-shaped into a situation. Is Maines actually the favorite to win this race? I'm starting to have my doubts.
It is not so black and white as it may have looked at a different point now. Inside of 50 laps to go. Drivers are nearing in on a deciding green flag pit cycle that may determine who's going to win this Brickyard 400. It's about to get real good. Back there in traffic, Junsa Lim scored at the number 12 spot. He's going to make a move around the number 25 of PB Henry. Those 2 cars 28 seconds behind the leaders in an interesting spot, because that's kind of all that I think Junsa can get out of it at the moment. The next car ahead of those 2 is William K. Price in 11th, but he's 12 seconds up the road. So it's a good pass for Lim, but I don't know if the 18 can get much further than P12, just given where everybody is on the racetrack.
Yeah, I think at this part of the race, it just becomes gap racing and try to hope for something, right? A yellow flag or whatever, it doesn't matter, but it's becoming that kind of race where you might have to accommodate yourself with the position that you're in unless something different develops.
And it's almost a point where you think to yourself, it's almost a little bit too quiet, right? Like,
yeah.
What is it going to be, the green flag pit cycle, which we know we are about 7 to 10 laps away from kicking off with these top cars. That's going to be chaos. It's going to be everything you saw last time. The cars who pit earlier are going to be faster. If Derek Heitman or Roger Pierce from 5th and 6th, if they pit first, they may pass a Maines or Schneider, but in the end, short pitting, long pitting cannot hide, and you cannot run from your overall pace. And this timing of the yellow flags in this race is going to end up cycling out almost right on the money to where it's a full fuel run to the end, right? Which is good. There's sometimes where, say, 40 is our number to make the math easier, right? If we had a 100-lap run to the end of the race, well, then you've got a 40, a 40, and a 20. So somebody could go for that. You could split it 33, 33, 33. That wasn't the case. Last time we had a caution flag and kind of cycled everything around, we were all running at about just past lap 40. And it's made the math, for lack of a better term, pretty close, right? And pretty clear cut. Now, we've had about, 4 or 5 cars. They've splintered off. They've gone to a 3-stop strategy, we believe. And there's still variance on the strategy within these leaders. Some pit early, some pit late. But for the most part, it has made the gap that much tighter. It's made it harder to find a difference when everybody is more or less got the same idea in mind for the pit stops.
Yeah, because right now I think like the golden number would be hitting 40 without too much of a hassle, right? You might have to lift off the gas, maybe turn on and turn off the engine, and try to try to do some very risky strategies. I think Pierce had a little bit of a moment that might open the door for Hines to make the move and go up to 6th place.
Doors open. Yeah, 14 trying to get on through, and he's got it. Corey Hines, you rode on board a bit there. Well, he set that one up. Able to make the pass on to Pierce. Pierce really wanted to, could have forced the issue to try to pass him back. We'll see if he does. These are 4 cars for position as Derek Heitman comes to pit road with 45 laps to go for his final pit stop of the night. James Holter in the 5. He'll go to the inside onto Pierce. He'll make that pass for P6.
Yeah, finally took a little bit of a breakthrough, but managed to make it anyway. But coming back, like you just said, maybe stick to 40 laps. The golden number would be maybe 36 for you to, don't have to go oversave the car a little bit and maybe lose a little in terms of pace. Because, of course, you have the top split drivers. Maybe they have more adaptability for you to that kind of stuff. But the thing is, it's harder than what we are saying right now for you to hit that 40 without too much of a hassle. If you pit at lap 121 and then get back on the track and don't be worried about fuel at all.
And if you've been watching the intervals, Jacob Schneider has gone the wrong direction. It was this point in the last run, right at the very end, where he was clearly better than Garrett Maines, and that has not happened. He was able to close the gap. At one point, it went from about 1.3 down to 4/10, and I was starting to sit up straight in my seat and look at the lap times, thinking here it was coming, and it has been a steady decline since then, with Garrett Maines now having his biggest advantage he's had almost over this entire run.
Yeah, 1.5 seconds. I think you can argue might be one of the largest gaps in the race total, right?
Yeah.
But I think Schneider can get back at it. I think the fact that Main's stuck in a little bit of traffic might help the cause a little bit, even though last lap 53.9 for Main is 54.26 for Jacob Schneider. It's gonna take some effort for Schneider to think about maybe winning this race, but I don't think he has the tires to do that kind of a job for him.
And now the waiting game begins, because we are inside of the window. We've seen cars go 42 laps to the end of this race, and this time by there are 42 laps to go. We know they can do it if they were to pit at this point. So now it's a little bit more of that nuance that we talked about. When do you want to pit on your tires? If I'm Garrett Maines, I'm not rushing to pit road because I'm putting numbers on the cars behind me right now. 2 more tenths of a second in his favor. Maines with the 53.791. It was a 54.0 for Schneider. If I'm Maines, I'm not rushing to pit road because I'm doing what I need to be doing. I'm gapping the cars behind me. I'm the fastest man in Indianapolis right now, and there's no need to pit early and then put myself at a tire disadvantage long run. Schneider really struggling now. Look at the gap grow. 2 full seconds now.
Yeah, it's gonna be 2 seconds, and it just makes things more complicated as you still have battles, which is a good thing, you know, even though you're seeing the separation between the leaders, still battles throughout the field in small packs, and you can see Bonds, Mirage, and Price, the car being the odd man out in this 3-car pack, still battling for positions in the top 10, and still with some good way to go before they do their pit stops.
Yeah, lots going on, and now we got a taker. Conklin from P6, Hines from P7, and Miller Bonds as well. The bank is open for business as they are coming to pit road, and we are going to make critical pit stops. Again, it's, for lack of a better term, an easy pit road entry, but it's only as easy as you want it to be. How aggressive do you drive to the commitment cone to get the 55 miles an hour? You got to be clean into the box. Conklin has been. After his night started oh so good, Conklin has been largely out of the conversation to win this race for the last little bit of it. And I'm not currently seeing tires going on the 3.
Weird.
What is happening? Sean Conklin in the car. Was he hit maybe with a penalty or an issue? Now the service will begin, but whatever has happened is a disastrous pit stop for Sean Conklin. Everybody else looking for a 15-second stop in the box. Conklin already at 40. This is disastrous.
I feel for him, man. I think he got a penalty as well.
Whatever is going on to Sean Conklin, his night is done in terms of fighting for the race win that easily. And now the leader is coming to pit road. Garrett Maines will be followed by Jacob Schneider in second. Clayton Hoffman in third, follows behind as well. Does James Holzer join them as well? Yes, he does. 1, 2, 3, and 4 down pit road. Garrett Maines needs a clean stop, and then he'll be in the home stretch. Oh, and look out there. One car exiting the pit stall. That was PB Henry right near Garrett Maines.
And you really don't want to be making contact with the leader in the pit lane, and you can do that in the fast and slow lane. So, scary moment right there for Maines.
He said over the radio, got his heartbeat going a little bit. He's now leaving the pit lane. Is Garrett Maines 15.9, a little bit of a slow stop, I'd say. 15.7 for Maines, all things considered, but I think it'll still work out. Schneider exits pit road. He was no better at about a 15.8 as well. So slow-ish stops for those top 2 cars. If one of them could have pulled out a 15.1, they could have made up a second on each other. Instead, they were both about equal on pace.
Yeah. Now, my only question, I'm starting to beg a question. Let's just say we have a yellow flag at this moment. Out of random, you know, maybe a driver mistake or something of the nature. Who does that benefit? does it benefit Mains? Does it benefit Gianni, for example? Because everybody might be reset, or those who actually had a very early pit stop can get new rubber and reset with the rest of the field. Who does the benefit to, even though it is like one pit stop for everybody and they're going to go at the end without caring about fuel anymore?
Yeah, I think if we had a one green flag pit cycle to the end of this race, it could benefit the Navarros and the Heitmans of the world, right? Because last time we cycled through green flag pit service, they were ahead of the Ryko cars, right, for 10 laps or so. If yellow fell in that range, I think then you got a real case, because you can get on even tires. Maybe you don't have as much raw pace, but you've got the track position. The problem is Garrett Mains is already P2. So any yellow, you're still going to be behind Mains. And Mains has been so good. Leading 86 laps, of course. It was a really good night for Sean Conklin as well, but he's essentially out of this race with whatever his issue was on pit road. I think the only way you win is, obviously Mains has got the track position. You got to do something off the wall on tires, right? It's got to be a 2 versus a 4, or a none versus a 2, but the fact that Mains has the track position right now makes it that much more difficult for a yellow to change anything if we get one, because Mains is still the guy.
Yeah. The only thing I'm trying to think of, let's just say yellow flag, you have your Dichon, your Navarro, your Hoffman, right, doing their pit stop. I think, like you said, you reset the tire, you might have, throw them into a second life, a second win. They don't have to care about fuel anymore, so does Mains. The problem, I think, becomes of these guys might find themselves in an uphill battle because they don't have to think not only about Mains, they have to think about Schneider, they have to think about Ryko drivers, because they saw how difficult it was to overtake.
And Garrett Mains in the number 1 car has been able to make the pass on the 16 of Brad Newman. They're on different strategies, but it may be the last time that we say there's a new race leader at Indianapolis. At Garrett Mains has gone back to the top of the scoring pylon with 35 laps to go. Plenty more to fight for. DiCiani in the 7 car, ahead of a 2-way battle behind, as it is Andrew Navarro making the pass on Paul Hill. There is some speculation that as many as all 3 of these cars make it all 4, right? Newman, DiCiani, Navarro, Hill, they may not be able to go to the end of the race. So they're fighting hard right now, and right now they're fighting for 3rd. But this may turn into a battle for 17th if these cars have the lack of fuel that we think they do.
Yeah, and I know for a fact they are not going to last until the end of the race. They need a yellow flag, so they're going to be battling for that. If they get a yellow flag, then this completely turns it upside down, right? It becomes, instead of P7, P17, P18, maybe P16, given circumstances, it can become a P7 battle with the shuffling of the pit stop zone.
Jacob Schneider in the 2 car coming through. He is in a position as well where he, much like Garrett Mains, good on fuel. He's going to pass them all. He's likely going to be the driver to finish 2nd place in this race. It is still wild for me to see Schneider with a 6.6 second gap to Garrett Mains after he was leading this race about 70 laps ago.
What surprises me as well is the gap that Mains has on Schneider after the pit stop. 10 seconds is something extraordinary.
And now the waiting game begins again. Still waiting on a handful of drivers to pit, and in fact, right as I mentioned that Jason Mains comes down pit road, he was one of the 6 or so that was on that alternate 3-stop strategy, likely needing to pit before this race ended. He did. Again, that even kind of further strengthens the thought that we're going to likely see Newman, Navarro, Hill, and more, and now Matt DiCiani down pit road as well. So, as expected, these cars needing 3 stops to go to the end of the race are making their final trip down.
Yeah, right on. they're going to be doing right on cue and safe until the end.
On board there, Clayton Hoffman, one of the drivers who is good on the fuel. He will eventually cycle through to third place once all of these other cars pit, but Hoffman's got no interest in waiting around. He wants to get him now to the inside of the 8 car. Derek Heitman for P6. Blocked road, Jason Maines, fresh tires, but slower pace in front of them. Made this one a little bit interesting as that 26 was getting up to speed right in front of him. Hoffman makes the pass. Maines is not for position in front of him, that being the other Maines, as Brad Newman is now also down pit road. He will relinquish P7.
I'm wondering how Newman is actually can benefit with this. He's going to be, I think, shuffled out by P17-ish once he's all said and done when he comes out of the pit lane. But because he has better tires, I can see definitely a potential top 15 for him. Maybe top 10 depending on how fast he is and consistent throughout the track as well.
And these are the shots that, if I'm on the Mains pit box, gets me a little bit worried, right? When you have not only this many cars stacked up in a row, but the difference is the variance in strategy is also a little bit unpredictable. When everybody's on the same tires, you know that you're fighting against a car who's on the same tires. It's a pretty fair fight. When you've got some cars on old tires, some cars on new tires, closing rates are different, braking zones are different, and right there you saw it in the corner on the bottom right there. Heitman drove it in really close to the bumper of the car in front of him just because everybody's car's in a different spot right now, and there is nothing more dangerous than a bunch of race cars doing almost 200 miles an hour, braking, lifting, and turning at different points when they're all on top of each other. So it's those green flag pit cycles that, yes, they spread the field out. It gives stuff breathing room, but it can also present precarious opportunities. And I know Garrett Maines is fast. I know he's putting down 52-second lap times, but as we get closer and closer to the end of this race, Lorenzo, I'm starting to think those lap times are going to feel like 2-minute lap times, which is how much the nerves and kind of glance it up where you know if there's an accident, you know where that yellow flag's going to pop up on your screen. You're almost looking there, just double checking that it's not there every once in a while because you're just afraid that something's going to take it away.
I think you can basically make a statement that every single lap he's going to do a Holy Father, right? A Holy Father prayer because he wants to be done and he doesn't want a yellow flag to hamper anything on his works, right? I think that's the best way for you to state his situation right now.
At 12 of Miller Bonds has had an impressive night. He started 4th right now in P9, but he's been super consistent in this race. Again, the big winners, the big losers are fewer and further in between than the cars who have just been solid. But, you know, James Holzer, somebody who I think a tip of the cap belongs to, started 27th in this race. He's P6 right now. He's done a great job at racing through the field. There are so many different drivers who have had different stories tonight, and now the waiting game begins. Let's go down trackside at Indianapolis. Let's take in the sights and sounds with a little bit of RaceSpotTV fan immersion. That's what it's like to take a couple of laps around iRacing's virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway as we are closing in on 20 laps to go in this iRacing Brickyard 400. Some close calls through all of that, some passes. Jacob Klein nearly lost it in the 19 car. He had to go all the way down to the apron on the back straightaway to catch that car. All further proof that this race still far from over. Derek Heitman has to come down pit road. He only pitted about 5 laps earlier than our top cars. I still think Means and Schneider are good, but that's a little bit too close to comfort, maybe.
Looking at everybody over here, they're about 17 laps average. Heitman was at his highest 23. And now the highest ones in the track are actually Nolan Hodgson and Jay Sanchez with 19 laps, and also Gunnar Bonds and Corey Hines with 19 laps driven. So that's pretty much the highest ones on track. Other than that, I think they're all safe as we are going to go into the final 20 laps of this race.
Yeah, the only maybes, Corey Hines, he's been out there for 20. That's about 4 laps shorter. Again, I think they'll still be good. The benefit that these teams have on the sim is they're going to get a, extremely accurate representation and data of how much fuel's left in the car. The sim will just tell them how many gallons, down to a tenth of a gallon, how much is in it. The sim will then also calculate really accurately how many laps it estimates that these drivers can go on to fuel. So maybe for whatever reason, Heitman saw that number was just a little bit too low, didn't feel like he could save enough, and had to come in. Vincent Crowe also came down about 3 laps ago. So if you're pitting for fuel, it's not a guess, because iRacing gives you the tools to be able to calculate that extremely accurately. It's a little bit easier than the real-life crew chiefs in NASCAR, where you have to weigh a fuel can before the pit stop and then weigh the fuel can after and do a math equation to figure out how much of the fuel gone into it. iRacing will just tell you. That makes the job a little bit easier for these drivers and the crew chiefs.
And not only that, but they have also the opportunity for you to use, those apps of, that gives you the live fuel calculators and pace and everything, how much you have to fuel and something like that, to give a preview or that blanket of security as well as your stint goes on. Lots of drivers use it. They use it in the Coca-Cola NASCAR A Series. They use it in the Porsche Sport Super Cup because it gives them an advantage. It gives them a sense of what is happening on the track if you don't have a spotter like some of these guys probably don't have on the track. So it's a good assistant tools that can ease up the day of a driver that might not have the same skill level as they do.
A lot of drivers chatting as well. Fresh tires, those who just pitted now, are all of a sudden the fastest cars on track, and puts guys like Garrett Maines like this at a tricky spot, right? Derek Heitman, fresh tires, unlapping himself. Garrett Maines is the leader, but the slower car in that scenario, so he kind of has to awkwardly yield to the 8 car. They did a good job over the open radio channel of communicating with each other. It's another thing that's unique to the sim. It wasn't that long ago that NASCAR drivers had a old driver radio channel. They could talk to each other on super speedway racing. That long since gone, though. But here on the service, not only are a lot of these teams, the Ryco guys, for example, probably using a Discord or a private channel to talk to one another, but you can just chat to anybody open on the sim, and gives us some insights when drivers aren't happy with each other, but it also gives us some insights when drivers are coordinating with one another, like it was in that case for Maines to carefully not get caught up in anything. And now Heitman going to get around Matt DiCianni, who is also one of the lead lap cars, and that would be 4th position between these two for the 8 and the 7.
Yeah, a little bit farther back in the field. And like I said before, Team Conti drivers, they probably are in the same Team Conti channel whenever they are on their Discord, maybe racing, and try to get some good coordination among them and try to strategize something, try to push each other up the field. So it's another of those things that can work on their favor, as well as we're slowly winding down in this race. 17 to go. 16 will be once they come up into the start-finish line here, Evan. And what was once a little bit of a shady cloud over the black and white of maybe Maines will win this race or not. I think it's all set to a Garrett Maines win here at the Brickyard.
Garrett Maines has been the car tonight. He's now led 105 laps total, but nothing as important as the 16 laps that are still to go, and some positions still to be decided, including the battle for fourth, the battle behind them about 8 seconds down the road for P6, also up for grabs. So a couple of good fights still up and available. The 14 of Corey Hines has the spot right now. James Holzer challenging. One car behind them nearly lost it on their own off the corner. That was Joe Torres.
Matter survived the whole ordeal.
And here they go, side by side in the battle for fourth. Holzer, the aggressor, on the bottom. But Corey Hines going to be able to get the run on the exit of turn number 2. So Hines has the advantage. He'll have a nose in front, but the 5 car going to throw it into the corner. Holzer perseveres, and James Holzer, top 4 spot. He has now passed 24 cars. That is more than anybody else in this entire race.
A surprising figure. It shows like sometimes if you're at the back, it's never over, right? You still have a fighting chance, which is always good to know if you're never give up. The never give up attitude. It's easy to see, for example, in road races, if you make a mistake, that way goes away because you might not have time to conquer back in a race like this. Imagine how that going on in the spot 24 in a few hours.
Hines got a little bit aggressive on the exit there, but again, I think Holzer's got that one locked up. And there's another battle not that far behind them as well with the Roger Pearson company that we look at right here. Pierce has got P6. Miller Bonds is there in 7th. William K. Price is there in 8th. It's a 3-car battle for 6, 7, and 8. So this is by far the closest group of 3 anywhere on the racetrack, and it's all inside of the top 10.
Still providing his battles despite the gaps that we have in the entire field alongside the top 3.
Here's on board with Price. He's had a good night in his own right as well, having passed 13 cars. That's about 3rd best on the positions gained. Could he do a couple more, though? Bonds almost out of control that time off of turn number 2. I think he kept the right rear off the wall, but if he did, it was not by a large margin. These 3 are in a battle. The car ahead of them, Tommy Gossett, that is not for position. It is just Price and the 2 cars in front of him duking it out for, at best, P6, unless there is one more plot twist that hangs in the balance. But if not, looking at a 100-plus lap green flag run to the end of this race. If we can get a little bit further, now we'll start counting it down with 13 laps to go.
And slowly but creeping into the one with the fat lady saints.
It's hard to tell if anyone's got an advantage here, right? We caught the battle for P4. Holzer got to Hines. They kind of squabbled for a little bit, and then we saw the 5-car make a move. I'm not seeing anybody tip an advantage one way or the other. Pierce, Bonds, Price, they are really close to one another, but they're also really close to one another on speed. It's not like one struggling late in the run. It's impressive because they've all been out there for now about 30 laps to the end. Again, the tires are going to be the worst that they've been all night long, right when it gets to the very end of it. So there is still plenty more to go. Check it in there with Brad Newman in the number 14 position. Derek Heitman and him doing battle. The 8-car passing Newman that time down the back straightaway.
Yeah, that was a 52.9 for 50, and now 53.0 for Hyman. 53.4 is for Newman. Of course, the 10-lap difference in terms of tires for Hyman and Newman made the difference for the number 8 to make that overtake. And Hyman now nearly going to the status quo, going back into no positions gained, no positions lost in total.
Here's PB Henry in the number 12 spot. He gets into the bumper of the car ahead of him. That was the 4 of Andrew Navarro, who just passed him. Navarro, 10-lap better tires. Easy pass there. Navarro, one of the drivers who was on the 3 pit stop strategy to the end of the race. So it was a bit of a parting bump from PB Henry, because I just think the tire disadvantage there. He knows Navarro's going to be better. And that's one thing we haven't checked in a ton with, right, is those cars who had to do the 3-stopper, where have they ended up? Well, Heitman is in the number 13 position right now. You've got some of the other drivers, Vincent Crow back there, 24th, even further off, but Navarro kind of the leader of that group who went for the 3-stop strategy, so it may not all be bad for Andrew Navarro, who started this race in 15th. The 3-stopper may not be a race-winning decision, but looking at numbers, he could still maybe get as high as P9 if he could chase down the likes of Junsa Lim and Vinicius Moret.
Yeah, he has the and looking at the laps, 53.4 for him, 53.479 for Junsa Lim. The problem is going to get to Lim. 5 seconds is the gap that he has on the number 18. Getting on Vinicius might be a little bit easier because it is just 1.7, but there's still some work to be done for him, and I think it's a doable effort, but with so little to go, I don't think he's going to be able to.
And here's Gossett now trying to make the move down on the inside as he runs in 22nd spot and is able to complete the pass on the 19 of Jacob Klein. So 22nd and 23rd will exchange hands. That is maybe the only other trio on track. We've seen the battle for 11th, the battle for 6th, that one the battle for 22nd, going in favor of Gossett. They're about a lap down, but again, every position matters when you fight through to the very end of what is an endurance race. And I know, Lorenzo, it's not the Spa 24. I know it's not the Daytona 24. I know it's not a 24-hour race. But by stock car standards, 400's no slouch. Now, this is still not the Coke 600. We've done that one here on RaceSpotTV. Yep. That one the longest night in stock car racing. But any full-length NASCAR Cup race on iRacing here, a grueling battle. And I'm impressed the fact that of the 35 cars who started this race, 29 of them are still on track. And for a 100-plus lap green flag run at the end, still looking at 15 cars on the lead lap.
Yeah, it's still surprising to see this presence of cars. We started with 35, only 6 left, and despite some guys being, 13 laps down, the last guy being Joe Torres. He's 13 laps down on the league. He's still driving and trying to do his best, trying to have a little bit of fun, trying to grab some more data, maybe for a better performance in the next split. So that is good to see. That is good to know. The spirit of racing still goes on for these guys, and especially for a potential yellow flag. I don't know if that's ever going to come. I don't think it will. That could favor some of these drivers. For example, like we said before, maybe Navarro or Newman or even Price that could benefit from this.
On board again with PB Henry. We've been checking in with him a couple of times. He and Navarro, to your point, doing battle. Navarro was able to make that move as the 4 machine past him and is holding, but PB Henry's impressing me on the older tires. Has not allowed Navarro to get away. He's still got Newman breathing down his neck behind him at about a second and change off. So this could be a late addition to all of the battles available on track. Could PB Henry make something happen with the older tires, upset Andrew Navarro, and stop that 4 car from being able to turn his 3-stop strategy into a top 10 finish? Going to be 6 laps to go in this race. Garrett Maines looking for the magic number 5 the next time by the stripe. I think Henry's got a realistic chance here for that number 12 spot, but there's more than just that on the line. William K. Price in the 10, Miller Bonds in the 12. They're battling for position. The car behind them, Jacob Klein, is not, but the 12 and the 10, only one of them going to be able to finish P7.
It's a good battle between them, and you can see Price going closer, a little bit behind. Lim, I think, managed to make the overtake on Mirai, so the Brazilian goes back into the off spot off the 10th place, still in the top 10. Good result for the Brazilian though, but all eyes are over here. That number 10 might lose a spot right now. Quite. He's going to retain the spot, but I think he's going to have to get a massive run and nurse the tires a little bit for, I would say, 1-2 laps here, Evan, and then Price can go on the strike because there's still some leeway. He's not going to have the back marker to block any attempts or get in the way of them on their battle.
Yeah, can Price cool the tires down for a lap, wind it up, and take another look? Going to be one of the last positions to change hands in this 400-mile event. Price to the bumper, not getting the exit on the 2 exit is what he needs there, though. Just not the speed off the corner, and Miller Bonds, again, gaps it back up. That 19 machine has been really patient at not interfering, but Jacob Klein's got to go at some point, look into the inside of the 10, and as he catches the 10 in the corner, is that the nail in the coffin? Because now Price's gap triples to the car in front of him.
Yeah, that is over. Unfortunate not seeing a battle. I'm seeing a few other close gaps among drivers in the track though. Like for example, I'm seeing Brad Newman catching up to Andrew Navarro for P12. For what it looks like, we might have a battle just outside of the top 10.
We've seen those familiar cars tonight. The bright teal of the 16 of Brad Newman. Always hard to miss that car. The 4 Navarro. Slip it and slide it. We thought it was going to be PB Henry giving it to Navarro and making him a little bit nervous late. Instead, Newman past Henry. Now to the inside of Andrew Navarro. A pass for P12. Brad Newman cashing in just a few more spots gained on the fresh tires.
Very good job from Newman though to go up on Navarro, even though the tire delta is not that much. 28 laps for Navarro and Newman, actually 28 for Newman and 27 for Navarro. I think it's just how Newman nursed the tires throughout his stint.
And Newman should be able to hold that gap over the 4 Navarro and wrap this one up. And speaking of which, Garrett Maines looking to wrap it up as well, as the next time by, the white flag will be in the air and this race will be official. He's just about, let's say, give it a dozen car lengths behind that battle that we were just watching. He's grown after, I thought Schneider had to become the car to beat at one point, Lorenzo, and was pressuring him. At one point, less than a half a second off before the final pit stop. Garrett Maines has exploded to an 8-second advantage over Jacob Schneider, second, and Clayton Hoffman in third. He's led over 120 laps. He only needs to go around for 2.5 more miles. The white flag is in the air for Garrett Maines.
Long overdue, and like you said, Schneider had a chance. I think what didn't do to him was the battle against Navarro, and after that it was just downhill from there. But all earned for Maines though. What a drive.
Started from P9, which many would have thought was a miss, but it didn't take him long. Charged up front to the race lead, and even in the moments where there were challengers from the likes of Schneider, from the likes of Conklin, Garrett Maines in the end was always able to find a way to do it. And in a race that had moments that were nail-biting, This one gonna end in quite the dominating fashion. Garrett Maines comes across the yard of bricks as an iRacing Brickyard 400 champion. More battles up for grabs. Price in P8, Bonds in P7. Are there any last-ditched efforts? The 10 car not able to get the position. Can he set him up in turn number 4? Price to the bumper. Price to the inside. They touch. That scrubbed off just enough speed. Miller Bonds tries to block at the line, and the 10 car gets it in the end. How about June Salim? Big winner, +2 on the money as they have some fun across the stripe, and all of those last-ditched efforts are so far behind the man who won it that he's already prepared for his burnouts. As they celebrate their 4-year anniversary, Ryko dominates. The Brickyard 400s return to the calendar with a Garrett Maines checkered flag.
Yeah, a well-worn drive from Garrett Maines. You know, there were moments where we thought, okay, maybe his reign over here at the Brickyard could have been, you know, under threat, but no more, no longer. I think that was well-deserved after the pit stops. The experience of being in the Coca-Cola NASCAR E-Series could have made a difference for him to be on the top spot and never let go. And the burnouts, like I just said, well-deserved for him.
Garrett Maines has been along for the top level of sim racing for quite some time. He's competed in the iRacing Rallycross World Championship Series, the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, in which he's an active participant in, and I'm sure he's won many of these top split NIS Opens, but it's always good to call yourself a special event winner. Garrett Maines is a Brickyard 400 champ with FGR-XL. He gets the race win. Jacob Schneider had a chance to maybe spoil the party. Ends up with a disastrous closing cycle, a mistake on pit road of some sort. He gets P2. Clayton Hoffman ends up in 3rd. Still a great showing for all 3 of those drivers. Holzer and Hines, your top 5, with Pierce, Lim, Price, Bonds, and Heitman, the top 10.
Then we have Vinicius Moraes, Brad Newman with a good after recovery going out in the top 12. Andrew Navarro, a good run out going into P13. PB Henry, the last of the cars in the lead lap in P14. Matt Duchani, Paul Hill, Jason Maines, Matt Cox, Vincent Crow, and Tommy Gossett in the top 20.
Continuing on through the likes of Conklin, who maybe doesn't get the result that was deserving after he led 13 laps in this race. He ends up in 21st position. Jacob Klein, 22nd. Zach Lambert, Nolan Hodgson, Jay Sanchez, the top 25. Keegan Fleckenstein, Mark Padgett. You got Jose Acosta, Joe Torres, and Nicholas Padovich, your top 30 finishers. That leaves only Wimbley, Russell, Schwartz. Cruz Caldell started top 10, 34th, and then Luis Becerra comes home in 35th position. That is the look top to bottom at your full race results tonight from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And we talk about the pageantry of it all. iRacing's return to the oval here at IMS for the NIS calendar. Of course, that coincides with the NASCAR Cup Series returning. We talked about the Ryko 4-year anniversary celebration, and those two storylines merged together tonight in a really impressive win for Garrett Maines, Lorenzo.
Yeah, absolutely. The team effort was well-deserved. Everybody just put up their, their golden setup, showing up why they're one of the premier setups for NASCAR, for the NASCAR Cup cars in iRacing. Lots of guys, are, doing their best effort to, showcase the shop as one of the premiers in this heavy convoluted market that we have in terms of shops, and coming in with their premier team and having such a good performance. And let's just say Conklin was due to a top 5 if not for the pit stop mistake, right? So which is insane to think about. They have 3 drivers that could potentially go for top 5, and 2 of them inside the top 5 and then podium spots as well. I think they're gonna take happily this not only win but also podium for for Schneider as well.
See some of the drivers that competed in this race joining us in the Twitch chat. Appreciate all of you being a part of this race by participating. All of you for tuning in at home as well, for watching. Going to give some of our top finishers a few moments to get an opportunity to chat with them before we step away. But, you know, it's worth noting, like every time we do one of these big events, it comes to an end, but there's more to look forward to. 3 different times we come to this Indianapolis Motor Speedway. There is still another one to come with the Indy 6 Hour in September, but even in July, Lorenzo, more to come. The Spa 24 right on deck, and another addition to the iRacing special events calendar with the Martinsville MX 500 coming up later this month as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Coming in August 3rd, to be more exact, which I know this much because it pains my heart, Evan. Of all events in the iRacing calendar, special events that we have, this was the one I look for the most, because it is a new thing. It's a new event. It was made official, by the way, this week. We're in IMSA and Martinsville announced a partnership to run the Mazdas in the Martinsville Novo race with Mazda cars. So I'm not going to be here at my home. I'm going to be abroad, so not being able to partake this event is a letdown. But we have Spot 24 in just a few hours. There's even a few splits running as we speak for the Friday split. So it's good to see that the special events calendar is convoluted for this summer.
I'm sure there's at least one crazy person who is competing in his Brickyard 400 and is going to do a stint for a team at some point with the Spot 24. Maybe give yourself a day and go for one of the different sessions. But, you know, I've had a chance to do some of these iRacing special events back with the Le Mans 24 when that was a part of the calendar. Was one of the, I think, one of the best sim events I've ever been a part of driving in it. It's rare. I try to avoid the wheel so I not be a hazard. But that one was a ton of fun. You know, those races require so much coordination. Yes, you know, you have a long race like this on the oval, nearly 3 hours in length. It's a long time behind the car. You'll break up those endurance events into 2 or 3 or 4 or sometimes 6-hour stints. You know, so those are some things that make things exciting. And I've enjoyed those events thoroughly. And then also, you know, the Martinsville MX 500. It's I don't know if less serious is the way to call it, but it's a fun event, right? I mean, some of these events aren't things that you have to practice for months and weeks leading up to it, right? You can go and run the Knoxville Nationals. You can do Crandon in an off-road truck at the Chili Bowl in December. So there is a little bit of everything for everybody on this calendar.
No, absolutely. You got your fair share of everything. You mentioned Chili Bowl, which is, I don't do dirt ovals way too much. I don't do the sprint cars. I wish I could do more, but it's so crazy to see those cars, you know, going around in short ovals, dirt ovals, that I get, I don't know, claustrophobic of sorts. It might be one of the words or something like it. But it's insane then to see these kind of events. And like for example, the one that probably going to be looking for the most soon might be actually the Bristol 500 that I probably want to do. I haven't done one in ages.
You talk about battles of attrition in a stock car, and doing 500 laps at the last great Coliseum in Bristol is certainly up on that list as well. But as we prepare to step aside and say goodnight to this Indianapolis Motor Speedway and to all of you at home, Lorenzo, any other final thoughts as we saw Garrett Maines really open this one up with a statement win in one of iRacing's biggest events?
Just want to congratulate Ryko for the 4 years, you know, providing setups for NASCAR drivers. Congratulate Garrett on the win, and looking forward to see Spot 24, the top split, of which we'll broadcast in a little bit.
It'll be right here with RaceSpotTV on the iRacing Sports Network. Until then, that is it for us here tonight from Speedway, Indiana. On behalf of our entire team at iRacing, RaceSpot, and your broadcast team tonight, for our producer downstairs, Hugo Luis, for Lorenzo Bonder, my name is Evan Pasocco. I want to thank you for tuning in and congratulate Garrett Baines, who is your 2024 iRacing Brickyard 400 champion. Good night.